It's for the camera. Yes.
Children's lives. You have 1 minute. If anybody here would put that child's life in 1 minute, I put 20 cents in body bags in Vietnam 50 years ago. And I'm still carrying the body. So if you would reduce your child's life for 1 minute, and we have to talk about this now. I was here 3 years ago. And I was told something was going to be done about bicycles in Riverside Park. I know that $200,000 is raised to do something about bicycles. It's just about 3 years ago.
Use a microphone.
No, don't.
3 months ago, a 4-year-old child was killed over there. One of 3 people hit with bicycles on the same day. On the same goddamn day. That people get real. Listen, I rode a bike. I did a flip in front of Lincoln Center 35 years ago, and I said, "My God, riding a bike in New York City is dangerous."
1 minute.
I'm sorry. I'm talking about life and death. 3 years ago, I was here.
We've been talking about this.
I know. I did not do anything bad.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you for your
Thank you very
service.
much.
Thank you for your service.
We're gonna call up Stuart Riley.
Come back next month and you can have another minute.
It sounds like we're gonna do 12 times, 12 bad guys like this.
Thank you, sir.
That's where we talk about.
Thank you, sir. Well done.
Today, children's lives are being threatened like bicycles.
Hi.
Yeah, 3 years ago, said you were just about that.
Hi, my name is Stuart Rafley, and the reason I'm here this evening is to talk about improperly suppressed egress and ingress from the 79th Street Boat Basin Cafe with increasing frequency, but most specifically on June 14th and June 29th. The Boat Basin Cafe management put up barriers that impeded people from using the ADA compliant ramps at the boat basin. I've spoken with Julian Delaporta at the councilwoman's office, and I don't know if he's here this evening, but I sent him a PowerPoint deck, and he may be mentioning this later. We didn't get a chance to confer just prior to the meeting. Thanks very much, everybody. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Delano Wood is here from DeRote. Delano?
Sir? You might want to send that.
What DeRote is, we're a nonprofit organization, and our job is to get them involved. This is a flyer of our programs for July and August. I'll leave them outside so you can see them. A lot of the programs are health and wellness programs, discussion-based programs, art and lecture programs. We have a Before Stonewall film screening coming up July 11th at 5:30. And we also have a jazz concert, and that will be July 18th. And the person performing will be Tony Middleton. So hope to see you all there. Thank you.
Next, we have the Borough President report from April Adams.
July 11th, we have our zoning resolution public hearing. It'll be July 11th. We have flyers up at the here tonight.
And I saw Deputy Inspector Mallon.
Someone's actually here to see me speak tonight, so I'm going to be very quick. So crime
I am.
went down 17% for the year, up slightly in the 28 days. The only thing that's really going to affect most people in this room that I'm seeing in my crime figures is I've got a spike in bicycle thefts. Some like real, really, no, not good. These are some of the expensive bikes. Some real quick tips. Never lock to a sign pole or scaffolding. We've seen a couple reports like that. They can be easily listed over a sign pole. We recommend the use of, of course, using a U-lock, but always a secondary lock, helps. We have yet to take a report this year of someone using a secondary lock and having a bike stolen, because it requires the perpetrator to carry 2 sets of tools, which they don't like to do. And finally, if you have a storage room, don't think that once it's in the storage room in your building that it is safe. Keep it locked in the storage room. I have 3 reports this year of it being stolen in the storage room. Alex, traffic, anything? That's it for me. Close it, that's right.
Hi, good evening, everyone. The city is actually having an initiative where we're not only cracking down when it comes to bicycle collisions, just to do a little bit of enforcement and also education. So just keep your eye out. Every precinct is going to have outreach at the most visible locations, the most visible intersections. It's going to be done by auxiliary officers and the traffic safety officers from every command. The 20th precinct in particular, for the year to date, we've had a total of 27 bicycle collisions, which is 3% of the total collisions at 784. When it comes to enforcement, it's about the same, 3%. Enforcement for bicycles is 152 out of 4,556 summonses regarding enforcement. Any questions?
What kind of enforcement are you doing on these?
Most of them are vision zero, so it's red light, running the red light, fail to use pedestrian, and we also do actually parking enforcement as well. So any vehicles that are double parked or parked in the bicycle lane, we're addressing those as well.
Hallelujah. Great.
I'm sorry?
The term you use, bicycle collisions, you said?
Yes, that's any accident that involves a bicycle.
So it could be a bicycle as the perpetrator?
Yes, that's any collision or accident that involves a bicycle. So it could be a bicycle with a vehicle, a bicycle with a pedestrian, just a bicycle on its own. Yes, in the back.
When does Vision Zero include education, enforcement of pedestrians, jaywalking, crossing? Standing off the curb from the street.
When it comes to education, that's actually one of the main things that we address. The auxiliary officers, we actually have a couple of posts on Twitter where we help people cross the street, and we talk about making sure that you cross at the crosswalk, and especially when it's dark outside with the vehicles, when they're turning, they can't see the pedestrians, so that's one of the things that we address.
At least twice a week.
Thank you so much. So we're now going to go into our business session. So I call on Mark Diller to make, we are pulling item number 2 and item 3. So cross those off your ballot. But Mark will make the presentation for you have.
Okay, so I'm on a time pressure here, and I also feel like the warm-up act for the Rolling Stones in 1969, because I know you're all here for something else. So I'll do this as fast as I can, but here we go. And by the way, it's worth remembering that at the time he was unknown, but the warm-up act for the Rolling Stones in 1969 was Stevie Wonder. I hope you have a similar view of me in 10 years. Here it is. Okay, so this is not a repeat of what happened in June. This is a different set of issues regarding the same structure that we talked about in June. It is the rotunda. It is a 3-level structure that is historic. It dates back to 1937. And as part of the DOT's and Department of Parks fixing of the highway aspects of this structure, they are also, God bless them, fixing the preservation issues. There are two essentially there are two aspects that involve the work in preservation. I've got some notes here because I'm going to try to move this along. You can break this huge project up into two basic buckets. One is restoration and refurbishment of what's there already, and the other is adding new features. So I'm going to run through them now, and then I'm going to show you some quick slides, and then if there are any questions, and then we can vote.
Would you back up so we can see the?
That's really a fair point. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so in terms of things that are being restored and refurbished, you're going to see that there are beautiful Guastavino tiles on the ceiling underneath the roadway. They're the same people that brought you the tiles in Grand Central Station, among other things. There's going to be coming up. I'm going to explain, then I'm going to show. Okay. Well, it's kind of in a different order. So there are bluestone pavers on the step ramps going down from the traffic circle to the mezzanine, as well as terracotta tiles underneath the Guastavino ceiling, and those are going to be restored. What is now a circular dining area actually began life as a fountain, and it's going to be returned as a fountain with working jets, and you'll see there's some wonderful whimsical elements, including a little turtle effect. And I hope there's a slide that's going to show you that it's not going to be huge. They're restoring the historically bronze handrails that went down the stepped ramps down to the mezzanine. They're replacing in kind the historic light fixtures everywhere except the traffic circle. I'll get to that in a minute. They're restoring terracotta vent decorations that fill out the vents. And they're restoring the ashlar masonry that sort of modeled various colors of brown that form the whole structure. As for the new features, the biggest ones are that they're going to open up 3 of the semicircular bays. You can actually kind of see them here. If I can make this work. Yep. There are these archways inside the mezzanine. They're going to open up 3 of them, and they're going to use them to create space for parks, offices, and so forth. There will be 2 new ADA compliant ramps. And to your point, sir, there's a ramp there, but it's a long way from ADA compliant. You'll see what they have to actually do to create something that comports with ADA, because the slope has to be a certain pitch and so forth. That is part of it. So there'll be one that leads down from the traffic circle area to the mezzanine, and another one that leads essentially from the porch on the west side down to the Esplanade and the C rail. There'll be new streetlight fixtures at the traffic circle level. They're type F luminaires. That's a standard thing that DOT uses in its arsenal. They will reinforce the inner and outer walls around the perimeter of the traffic circle. Right now, they're just masonry, so you may have seen that there are concrete barriers in case a car or truck or the M79 bus should hit it. It would probably rain debris below. So they're going to install a reinforced concrete core and then put the ashlar masonry back around it. They will also put a handrail, a squared at the top, post handrail around the interior and exterior of the annulus. I love that word. And they will make that compliant with code. So now let's go through some of our slides. We're going to show you here some of the things that I was just talking about. So there's the fountain as it originally existed. There's the step rail and that beautiful handrail. And there's one of the light fixtures that's going to be restored. Next, please. This is the archway. This is the opening with Robert Moses in all of his glory. Next one, please. I'm showing you this because I omitted to mention one additional new item, which is that if you've seen the concessionaire underneath the archway, there is this ugly mushroom cap that spews hamburger grease onto the roadway, among other things. And that's going to be replaced with 2 vents that will be located in an innocuous part that's not, where park users never go. And the venting will go through the garage beneath. This is a view of the Guastavino tiles. It doesn't look anything like that now, but the promise is that it's going to look more like that when we're finished. Here is a view of those 3 archways with glass that is going to be joined by a very thin rail, and then a doorway inside to that. This is a view of the railing that will go down one of the ADA ramps. Can we have the next slide, please? This is a view of what I just described as creating an inner core for the walls up on the traffic circle, reinforced concrete with rebar, and then they put the masonry above and around it again. Next, please. That's what it's going to look like up above. Next, there's the railing. Yep. These are the Type F luminaires, and this is where they're going to be placed. We're told that they can illuminate the traffic circle sufficiently. Next, please. This is that ugly mushroom cap, and you can see kind of the deterioration of some of those archways that are all going to be restored. Here is the dining surface that's going to be turned back into a fountain. Next, please. And this is the ADA ramp. So over, down, down, up, down, up, down, up, down, and then into the mezzanine. That's what you got to do to make these things ADA compliant. It will be, its surface will be the hex pavers that I'm sure we've all seen in many park uses. The side walls will be Deer Island granite. There will be railings that are open for the part where it's level with the ground next to it. But once it goes down below, could you go back one slide? Thank you. Once you go, I'm sorry, one more. Once it has an open side, never mind, keep going, go forward. Then there's got to be more posts to prevent children from falling off. Next one, please. Margaret Bracken, our wonderful landscape architect for Riverside Park, is going to restore the plantings. Next, please. This is the ramp that's going to go from the porch on the west side down to the C-rail area. Again, Deer Isle granite with hex pavers, and you see the kind of railing that we're talking about there as well. Next. This is another close-up of the storefront infill that will create park use. And do we have one more? And there's the fountain, and you can just see the turtles right there along with the water jets. Do I have any more? Is that it? Okay, I'm sorry. There's the terracotta decorative infill for the vents, and that's going to be restored in kind. Do we have another? These are some of the events. These are details of those things I just described. Next, please. And we actually are blessed with the fact that the Parks Department kept the plans from Robert Moses in 1936-37. So they actually have a template to do all this with. Are there any more? That's it. Okay, so our resolution is to approve this as appropriate. The standard for a certificate of appropriateness is, oddly enough, appropriateness. So that's why I got this job. So our resolution is to approve. Some of this we're saying is incredibly appropriate. Some of it we're saying is appropriate. Some of what we're saying is minimally appropriate, but it's all appropriate in the view of our joint committees. We did have some recommendations. We were grateful that the Department of Transportation in particular took us up on our request for a few things and agreed to change some things so that even though on this slide it says that the infill metal on the doorway in that storefront infill is going to be black, they agreed to make it a medium bronze to match the fountain, and that's what they presented it, submitted so that we're all on the same page there. It's just an old slide, that's all. The things that we did recommend were that the metal infill would be as thin as possible, that if there is a panic bar on that infill storefront, that it be vertical rather than horizontal so that it doesn't break the line of the nice infill that you saw. And that the roll down gate that would be behind it for when the Parks Department is not actively using the space, which let's face it is probably on the weekend when most of us will be there, has elements that will echo the design, including the arches. That is my presentation and my lightning round. Are there any questions?
This is board members only. We're going to take 2 or 3 questions. We want to try and be done with this by 7.
Okay, you have Shelley and then Richard.
Just kudos to the committee and special kudos to Mark on an excellent presentation. Very nice.
That shouldn't count against my time. Richard.
Quick question. Glass windows on the bays, are they transparent?
They are transparent, but they are reinforced glass, so there may be a little bit of that, I'm blocking on the word, but it's like your eyeglasses in the sun, so it blocks the glare. But other than that, it's transparent, yes.
Polarized.
Polarized, thank you. I see one hand back here, so I'm going to recognize that hand, but
You didn't mention anything about bike lane.
that's right, because that's not my job. That was last month, and so yeah, okay. So there's a reason for that, sir.
Just a further answer to Richard's question, following a community comment about birds flying into the glass, they changed their plan, agreed to put some kind of a surface in there that's not visible to us, but keeps the birds from flying in, so that was included.
Any other questions? I don't see any other hands, so we're going to call the question. All those in favor of our resolution, please raise your hands now.
Board members, hands high, because there's some of you can.
Correct.
37, anyone against?
Anyone abstaining?
Are you against or abstaining?
One.
Sorry. One abstaining?
Okay, I thank you.
Quick word of thanks to the Department of Transportation. It is wonderful when a historic structure is honored the way this should be, and kudos to you.
So we are now. We're gonna do. Yes, we're gonna do.
Thanks.
Hi, I'm Supervising Transportation Committee, for number 4, jumping to number 4, 72nd Street to 72nd Street, West 106th Street. New family radio dispatch is a car service. It's been there for many, many years, over 20. There have been no complaints we know about. Having heard that, the Transportation Committee voted to renew their permit for there. Are there any questions from the Community Board? Seeing no questions, we'll have a vote. All those in favor, please raise your hands.
Anyone against? One.
One against. And you abstain.
36, 1 abstaining. 0 without with cause. All right, 0. 36, 1, 0, 0.
Okay, so moving to number 5 is Central Park West, New York City DOT proposed protected bike lane on Central Park West from 59th Street to 110th Street. This was our committee reached out to the Department of Transportation because of the safety issues, the death of a cyclist on August 11, 2018. We requested the feasibility of a two-way bike lane on Central Park West. And we're now here to see DOT's response. And I believe DOT is going to make who's here from a presentation? Thank you. After that, I haven't had a chance to talk to Detective Inspector Malin. Are you still here? Great. I'm hoping you'll speak just a moment on bike enforcement because I know people have that question. And your opinion.
Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ed Pinkar, and I am DOT's Manhattan Borough Commissioner. Thank you so much for coming out on a hot night to learn a little bit about our proposal to install a protected bicycle lane on Central Park West. As Sue mentioned, last August there was a terrible tragedy involved. I apologize. Is that better? Perfect. Last August there was a terrible tragedy involving an Australian tourist, Madison Jane Leiden, on Central Park West. As a result of that incident, Community Board 7, Councilmember Rosenthal, Assemblymember Gottfried, and others called on the city and the Department of Transportation to evaluate Central Park West for potential traffic safety enhancements, including the installation of a two-way protected bicycle facility on the entire stretch. I want to commend my colleagues, some of whom are here tonight, Kimberly Rancourt, Paula, and Nick Carey, but also dozens of others back at our agency who really took up that challenge in short order, undertook a thorough analysis of the corridor, and thought through all of the intricacies, particularly on the transverses, to see what might be possible. Last month, we went to the Transportation Committee and we presented our proposal for a one-way path, and Nick is going to explain why we weren't able to move forward with a two-way path. We were very grateful that the committee voted unanimously to support that. So we've come tonight to give you a brief overview of what we're thinking and why, and to hear the feedback from the full board and all of the residents here. So as we struggle, I think, to get the presentation on. I apologize about that.
Now using my computer. So
Perfect.
Higher up, please.
Could you raise it?
Raise it up, Higher.
Online, the version online.
I noticed it's not the young people.
Henry, there aren't any.
Congratulations on your Montauk ride.
Thank you.
There aren't any?
Yeah.
That's too high, Mark.
Mark, thank you very much. Good job. So with that, I would like to bring up my colleague, Nick Carey from our Bicycle and Greenways program, who was instrumental in coming up with this proposal and will lead us through the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed. Hello, everybody.
Hi.
You have a full schedule tonight, so we have a somewhat reduced presentation, and I'm going to go through it a little quickly so that we can get everything done. Next. All right, so this is just a little background about the crash statistics on Central Park West. There have been many crashes on Central Park West, many crashes with injuries. On the map here, we tried to highlight the fact that many of these crashes with injuries happened at the intersections between Central Park West and the transverses. But the bigger thing to talk about here that I think Ed already mentioned is the tragedy that happened last year in August when a woman was killed biking on Central Park West. After that, CB7 asked us to see what we could do about it, and that's the real reason why we're here today. A little bit of background about protected bike lanes. Safety benefits, we've been installing protected bike lanes in New York City for more than 10 years now, and safety statistics are very compelling. Crashes with injuries have gone down 15% across the board when we install protected bike lanes, but pedestrian crashes with injuries have gone down more than 20%. So it's really, so protected bike lanes are really one of our most successful tools for reducing crashes, and not just for cyclists, for people walking and for people in cars as well.
Here we go. There is no questions. They're doing a presentation. There is no questions.
Thank you. So a little background about the project area. 1 block west of Central Park West on Columbus Avenue, there's a southbound protected bicycle lane. 1 block east of Central Park West, more or less, on Central Park Drive, on the West Drive, is another southbound protected bike lane. So for this project, we are proposing a northbound protected bike lane on Central Park West to complement the southbound protected bike lanes on Columbus Avenue and in the park. So this is a very challenging corridor. It's unlike a lot of the other corridors we've worked on in Manhattan. For one, the traffic patterns here are very challenging. Since Central Park Drive was closed to vehicle traffic, some of that additional volume has gone onto Central Park West. There's heavy vehicle volume in both directions, both northbound and southbound, during both the morning and evening rush periods. And most importantly, there's very heavy turn volume at the transverses. I can't emphasize this enough, that this isn't like an edge condition like the Hudson River Greenway adjacent to a rail yard or a continuous park. These intersections at the transverses are essentially like highway intersections, and the turn volume going into them is very large, both the southbound left, the northbound right, and the eastbound through volumes on all of the transverses at 65th, 81st, 86th, and 96th Streets. So for the bicycle facilities, there is an existing northbound conventional bicycle lane, but it's not physically separated from moving traffic. And sometimes cars double park in it, people load in it. And there's huge demand for the curbs. There's a lot of competition. You got the MTA buses, tour buses, school buses, people going to the park, the various museums. There's a lot of drop-offs, there's a lot of deliveries. So there's a lot of different things for us to balance on Central Park West when we think about improving safety for people cycling there. So this is the existing conditions on Central Park West. This is facing south. The park is on the left. There's parking on both sides of the street. There's 2 travel lanes per direction, and there is a northbound conventional bicycle lane. And again, that conventional bicycle lane, people riding in it are not physically separated from traffic, and sometimes people double park in the bike lane. So this is our proposal. The cross section on the top is the existing condition, and the cross section on the bottom is the proposed condition. So we're proposing to maintain the parking on the west side of the street, to maintain 2 travel lanes per direction because of the heavy vehicle volume, and to upgrade the conventional bike lane to a protected bike lane along the east curb. It's along the edge of the park. And to do that, we would have to remove the parking from the east curb of Central Park West. So this is a photo. This is a photo from 12th Street.
If this goes on tonight, we're gonna get nothing done.
Where's the environmental impact study?
If you agree
Where's the environmental impact study?
with something that's been said, it would be sensible to go like this, and if not, just be quiet. We have to hear everyone, we have to hear everything. This is not gonna be helpful.
Counter when we go like this.
Any way you like, but
We
quietly.
are now here.
So this is a photo of 12th Street in Manhattan. Obviously, this is a very different street from Central Park West, but the bicycle facility we're proposing is a similar concept. You can see a green bicycle lane adjacent to the curb, and in the adjacent buffer to that, we're proposing to install a combination of flexible delineators and quick curb, which are basically types of plastic bollards to separate moving vehicular traffic from the bicycle lane. At the many T intersections on Central Park West, we would install a painted pedestrian island to shorten the crossing distance and thus reduce the exposure from pedestrians from turning vehicles. This is what the design would look like at bus stops. We've specifically designed this bike lane in a way that buses can pull to the curb, let people off, let people board, and there's still enough room for cyclists to go around the bus without having to move into the vehicular travel lanes.
Only if they pull to the curb.
But now they can't.
You'll have a chance to ask.
So, to summarize the benefits of our proposed project on Central Park West, we're proposing to upgrade the conventional bike lane to a protected bike lane that is a safer design. It's more comfortable for a broader range of users. We want to create shorter, safer pedestrian crossings. One detail we didn't get into much here because this is a short presentation is that at the transverses, we would install dedicated turn lanes into the transverses from both directions, as well as leading pedestrian intervals for people crossing the transverses on foot or on bike. And another benefit is that we maintain traffic capacity during the peak periods, which can be very heavy. And with that, turn it back to Roberta.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Is Detective Inspector Nayland still here? Deputy Inspector, darn.
Commissioner, it's so much easier.
Mistake.
Right, he might wait till the last minute.
More than earned your promotion.
So I'll say exactly what I said at the committee meeting. The decision of whether or not to have a bike lane is something that the NYPD is agnostic about. So whether you have one or don't, It's not up to me. It's up to all of you. That said, if you're going to do it, if you are going to put a bike lane in there, do it right and use a protected bike lane. That's what we say, because the bottom line is that in the wake of Madison Wyden's death is simply this, is that my officers were out there doing a lot of enforcement, and the amount of taxis and other vehicles that cross the bike lane, the amount of doors that get opened up into it, it's not, I said this again at the subcommittee meeting, which is, it's not a matter of if there's gonna be another Madison Wyden, it's if the current design is allowed to exist. And again, you can either have one or don't, but if the current design is allowed to exist, it's when is someone else gonna get killed there. So that's all.
Thank you.
Bicycle enforcement. Bicycle enforcement, because people complain about it nonstop. Bicycle collisions represent about 3% of the total collisions in the 20th precinct. Remember, I go from 5.9 to 8.6. So our enforcement, it represents about 3% of the summonses we write. 97% of the collisions in the 20th precinct are car on car or car on pedestrian. So the majority of our enforcement is on cars, with about 3% reserved for bicycle enforcement.
Thank you very much. There'll be a community council meeting in September where Detective Inspector Mallon will have it.
I'm not gonna go into a
He'll give you breakdowns there.
Breakdown of what's on.
No, sorry. We're not taking questions, thank you. We have speakers. I'd like to say we're keeping the speakers to a 20 to 25-minute total speaking. We have more than 20 speakers, and each person has 1 minute. So please be courteous to the speakers following you. We will, if everybody takes a full minute, we will not be able to get through all of them. So if somebody has already said what you intend to say, simply say, I support, I don't support what that person said.
So are we gonna have board questions?
We will have
Third.
comment at the third.
First, we're going to do those again, so we'll be calling them up. Then we'll be calling those at 4, and then we'll be allowing the board to comment and question. 1 second.
What if you ask to speak and haven't taken a position? Because you have a question.
Everybody put a yes or a no? Did you
No,
put
I
a
was
yes?
told I could put a question and not sure.
Okay.
Well, if we get through all this and we have time, we'll be able to do that. We have just too many speakers. I have a few that are
Your name should come up.
names are here,
All the names are in a pile.
but we may not have time for that. So this is the deal. Sue is gonna call the name. You're gonna have 1 minute. Andrew is gonna ring the cowbell. I'm gonna watch the time at the 25-minute mark. We're gonna start with the people who are for.
Okay, so Pierre Kata, help me with that name. Renee?
How do we happen to have a cowbell?
Davis. Renee Kata, Janice Davis. Line up. After that would be Jerry Saltzman.
So if the three of you could stand in the line,
Do we have
if you're not here, then.
Renee Kata.
Renee?
The Brookport?
Just come straight up here. We'll hand you a microphone. Okay, it's gonna be slow if you guys don't keep moving. Renee Kata, last call. Next person, Janet Davis.
Yes.
After that, Jerry Saltzman.
Stand up there.
Hello, I represent about 30 buildings that have contacted me, and can you hear now? Oh, right into. I represent about 30 buildings that have gotten back to me after letters. Overwhelmingly, the residents of Central Park West are opposed to this bike gallery. There is no question. We live there. We live there. We are thousands upon thousands of people versus pitifully few bikes that are using that bike lane. Today, it was empty for hours. There were no bikes in that bike lane. So if you think there are thousands of people in the bike lane, you're wrong. This is a woman who was killed by a bike on 57th Street in April. This is a picture from my window of the girl who was killed, who pulled out into traffic. I called 911. I heard the truck screech and hit her with a bang. But that doesn't make everybody wrong. She was wrong. She wasn't an American. She did not know the rules, and unfortunately, time's up. I have a request. I am respectfully requesting not to take this vote until after the summer, when people have returned. You've done this behind our backs, and we want it to be done. This was listen to all these people who did not know. You're unfair.
After Jerry Saltzman, we'll have Barry Gusner. Barry,
Gary will be followed.
Yes, my name is Jerry Saltzman. I'd just like to, actually my concern is safety. I have no qualms about bikers but I do have concerns about safety. And I'd like to appeal to the community board to not expand bike lanes on Central Park West at this time. The two issues I believe that Central Park has challenges us, and they both been mentioned, so I won't drive through it, is it's a two-way street. And also, both police officers have talked about education. I firmly believe that education is fundamentally important. Yet, as we hear too, Central Park West is a tourist magnet, and it's very difficult to educate the tourists on the safety of driving up and down the streets. So I would like to keep the police focused on the lanes that we have in place, improve the performance there so we have more safety there. And again, let's use the park. That's what the park is for. Let's use the park for bicycles. Thank you.
we have Jerry Gusner, after that Kate Kopp, and after that Ellen Cotton.
Thank you. My name is Barry Gusner. I live at 25 Central.
Straight in.
My name is Barry Gusner. I live at 25 Central Park West. That's between 62nd and 63rd. Just to clarify, a lot of the speakers have referred to Central Park West going down to 57th, 59th. It does not. Central Park ends at 62nd, 63rd going south. You must turn off. There is no extended sensible route south around Columbus Circle. So that's the first thing. The second thing, could I call up your slide? I'd like the slide. Okay, here's the problem. Your plan calls for two lanes of traffic downtown, 2 lanes of traffic uptown. The problem is when you hit the transverse, you're going to have a left turn. Central Park West is different than anything you worked on. We don't have a mall.
Thank you. It's a resident. Thank you very much. Where are the names? Where are the names? Are you Katie Kopp? Thank you. After that is Ellen Cotton, and after that is someone.
Hi, I'm Kate Kopp, and we've lived here for 52 years. I've lived here for 52 years with my husband, and the park in the west side is one of the friendliest places in the world. When you remove the cars from the park, our side of the park, that side of the park is an extension of the park of all the children, with all the children and all the little chains of babies going across the street. And when you take those cars away, it's over now. Nobody's kids can run down that block, and they can fall out into that bike path. I think they're more important than the few bikers. And secondly, what are we doing with the 400 cars? Where are the 400 cars going? And you can ask these people, but as soon as it happens, all their bike parking things are going to go more on our side streets. This affects people on the park, and it affects all the side streets, and we are going to become hateful. In the 70s and 80s, people fought over parking spaces. It was the worst time in the world. I don't want to go back to that.
Ellen Cotton, followed by Marcia Driesen-Tepler, followed by Sean Donovan. Ellen Cotton.
Could you read the names louder?
Ellen Cotton, followed by Marcia Driesen-Tepler, followed by Sean Donovan. Ellen Cotton, is she here? Okay, pass on Ellen Cotton. Ellen Cotton? You got it. Yes, sorry, people. Your handwriting is all distinctive and not Times New Roman. You're Helen Cohen? No, Ellen Cotton.
No, Ellen Cohen.
Well, let's hear it.
Okay.
I have a gun.
Ellen Cohen, in case you didn't hear. So I support protected bike lanes, but I have tried to ride my bike south on Columbus Avenue and north on Amsterdam, and I feel like I'm taking my life in my hands because of the electric bikes that are zooming by me in the direction I'm going, which is the correct direction, and they're also coming towards me in the wrong direction. So I don't see any reason why that should be perpetuated on Central Park West. I think that should be enforced, that people have to run in the direction that the street goes. Electric bikes should have to follow the same rules as motorcycles and ride with the cars.
Marsha, Dreesen, Kepler, and please forgive me for massacring names. Then Sean Donovan, and then Trumbull Gross.
Yes, I'm Marcia Dresden Kepler, and I'm, okay. I want to tell you that Central Park West is just too narrow for a bike lane. It's unnecessary as there are other bike lanes nearby. It will make the route more unsafe for everybody. Pedestrians already, especially seniors, do not know how to cross the street. It's very confusing. All the markings on the street, you don't know which way to look, and that's how they end up getting hit by bicyclists. There are many doctors' offices on Central Park West, and eliminating the parking will make it more difficult, again, especially for seniors, to get to doctor's appointments. Because they cannot take public transportation, and there will be no place to disembark or for people to wait for them on Central Park West. So everyone says they are for the middle class, but this will just make life more difficult for the middle class by eliminating the parking spaces for people who need cars to get to work outside of the borough.
Next we have Sean Donovan, Trumbull Gross, Eric Lyons, Eric somebody. Okay.
Thank you. My name is Sean Donovan. I've been here several years ago before any bike lanes were installed, and I had asked for an environmental impact study, and I was told that the DOT didn't have to provide one. That's a lie. 14th Street, they just had a lawsuit now about they wanted to make it just buses only, and they were told that they were have to do an environmental impact study. Where's the environmental impact study? Where is the environmental impact statement? Where's the State Environmental Quality Review Act? None of this should be done until after that has taken place. This is causing pollution, causing problems, killing people, causing injury. It's the opposite. You've created a confusing mess out there with the way your left lane, right lane, bus lane, bike lane. Bullshit. It's nonsense. It's ridiculous. You disrupted an engineered grid. As an engineer, I'm appalled with what you have done. It's disgusting. You need to restore the grid, get traffic flowing, stop road rage, and people will be safe.
Trumbull Gross and Eric Lyons, then Peter Jeffries.
He was a frequent flyer for a while.
Hi, my name is Trumbull Gross. I was born at 65 Central Park West, and so I have a great affinity with my fellow Central Park Westers. My neighborhood on West End Avenue was ruined by Community Board 7's redesign of West End, and the Department of Transportation's plan to knock it down to 2 lanes after a tragic accident. The result is excessive traffic, noise, air pollution, and a solution that did nothing to reduce or make pedestrians safer. And in fact, impacted negatively the health and well-being of the entire community. There are 2 obvious solutions to this. The park. Put a yellow stripe down the drive and make the park drive north and southbound. That takes care of crossing the transfers in. There's no need to negotiate the transfers. And if you can't do that, then take the east side of the sidewalk on Central Park West and turn that into a bike lane and pedestrian way going each way. Those are the solutions, not more traffic and not more unsafe situations where people who don't know how to ride a bike ride bikes.
Eric Lyons, then Peter Jeffries, then Linda Edgerly. Okay? Eric.
Lyons, or maybe Eric.
I don't, is this you? Okay. Eric Lyons, Central.
Okay, he's okay.
Okay, who's next? Peter Jeffries, then Linda Edgerly, and then Gregory Neeson. Neeson? One sec, Peter Jeffries. Right into your face. It's on.
Hi, my name is Peter Jeffries. I reside on the Upper West Side here on 87 Columbus Avenue, just a block or two away. The reason why I'm against the proposed 400 spaces being made into a protected bike lane is, one, the disabled community was not consulted at all when these bicycle lanes were created, whatsoever. Second thing is, what's going to happen when 2021 comes in and congestion pricing kicks in? What's going to happen to our parking spaces then? Where people are going to come in, bring their cars, park it here on the Upper West Side, and then hop on a subway. Losing 400 parking spaces is bad enough. To be compounded with the fact of congestion pricing. Where are we going to park? Huh? Where are we going to park? Central Park was made for bikers. Use the park.
Linda Edgerly, then Gregory Nissen, then Sam Mendel. Linda? Thank you. Linda Edgerly concurs. Gregory Nissen? Sam Mendel, and John Lyons after that. John Lyons.
Come up. You guys can come up now.
I'll try to keep it simple. Among the most mortifying feelings in the world is to stand and walk across the street and suddenly there's a bicyclist and it's zipping right past you and you don't know where it came from and there's no time because a few minutes later you're in the hospital. This did not used to be a reality in New York City. I don't actually have an opinion about the fairly complex engineering decisions having to do with protected bike lane or not, and I do not live in that area on Central Park. I'm speaking representing as a pedestrian, which is about 6.5 billion of us or so, and I'm simply saying that this is a new and terrifying element in New York City brought about by the increasing popularization of bike lanes. Where the politics go from that, I don't know. But now I know that I need to be afraid for my life because I may not have in a split second to look this way and that way because somebody, whether or not they're honoring the law, goes right by me and ignores whatever lanes you have set up. That's all I have to say.
Sam Mendel, then John Lyons, then John Ritter.
Hi, my name is Sam Mandel. I'm on West 72nd Street, and I have a couple of things I want to say. First of all, I feel that this is being railroaded through the community. There has not been enough input. I didn't know about the first meeting till a day ago, and I think the community needs to be consulted more. Number two, a lot of emphasis was put on the transverse streets and how dangerous they are. That will not be minimized in any way whatsoever with having a bike lane that's a sign. You'll stop the danger of crossing through. You won't be minimizing that problem. Number three, any fatality is a sad affair. And this tourist from Australia is very unfortunate that she lost her life. Part of that fatality and the accident was a private sanitation truck, the driver of whom was then found guilty of a DUI with a ton of beer cans inside the truck. So that was an extenuating circumstance. What I'd like to know is how many of the precinct's accidents, how many of the accidents are attributable to Central Park West? My feeling is it's not many, it's very few.
Thank you. Next is John Lyons, then John Ritter, then Karen Aragani.
I'm going to be really quick so other people can talk. The first thing that I'm concerned about is I'm opposed to the plan because I think the plan is being rushed through, and it's an interesting sign that they're holding this vote on a holiday weekend when no one should be here. Second, I'm really worried about the older residents of my building. There's 138 families that live in the building that I represent. And a lot of them are older. A lot of them take a long time to get across the street with more traffic congestion and bikes. And they're really afraid of the delivery bikes that go 30 miles an hour. Somebody either should teach these people that they should ride, or the biggest problem for the older residents is they can't hear them. There's no sign that they're coming, and they come really quickly. Beyond that, I think that we do have a park, which is a perfect north-south bike lane that people can use. And the 400 parking spaces are, if you can't afford a garage in the Upper West Side, which goes for $600-700 a pop a month, you park on the street. The people that you're hurting by eliminating the parking spaces are those people that can't afford a garage. And then the other thing is, what are you going to do with all the buses for the museum that now have no place to park along the park? Thank you.
Next is John Ritter, then Karen Aragoni, and then Andy Oleski.
I live on 92nd and Central Park West, and I've lived there for many years. I've been a West Sider for 30 years now. I find that the traffic department are true believers. They believe in experimenting with our lives, and those experiments are dangerous. They kill people. The left turn lanes are irregular, the right turn lanes are unpredictable, and the pedestrians and the bikers never follow the regulations. Now, worst of all is for 6 months or more out of the year, nobody is going to use those bike lanes. In the wintertime, they don't use the bike lanes. So why do we have them? If they were for 4 months out of the year, it would make sense. Nobody uses them. I'm totally opposed to it. And our tradesmen, our porters, the doormen, all the people who work in our buildings need those parking spots because they can't afford to live on the Upper West Side.
Karen Aragoni, Andy Oleski, and after that, Destiny Bowers.
I've lived on the Upper West Side on Central Park West for more than 25 years. I'm an architect. I work at home, and I have a lifeguard chair view from 86th Street to 89th Street of what the traffic conditions are like. When my concern, I don't care as much about losing the traffic. The parking space doesn't bother me that much. When you reduce the number of moving lanes on Central Park West in 2 directions, people dropping off kids, most of the morning traffic in my neighborhood, it's private schools and it's doctor's offices. And when you have people who are now going to stop in the middle of Central Park West, people pull out into oncoming traffic in order to go around them. You increase congestion. When you increase congestion, just like in this room, you increase hostility and bad behavior.
We're running low on time, people. We're running low on time. Andy Oleski, Destiny Bowers, Julio Peterson. We're running very short on time, people. Where are you? Okay, Destiny Bowers.
Okay. Andy? 300, no?
After Destiny, there's Julio Peterson and I don't know, Aiden Morales.
Hi, I've lived in this area my entire life, and while I am not against bike riding or bike lanes, I think with all of the issues that people have risen, I'm in full support, but we do also have to take into account the enforcement of laws on the bikes. A lot of this comes down to the fact that we are all terrified of trying to cross the street because nobody pays attention to the law on the bikes. We have an influx of city bikes, we have an influx of tourists, we have an influx of people who weren't normally bike riders who do not follow the letter of the traffic laws. If we cannot enforce that, until we can, we should not have more bike lanes. Other than that, I support everything else that was also said.
Julio Peterson, then Jonathan Johnson. Julio Peterson. Okay, Jonathan Johnson. After that, Aiden Morales Stern.
Hello, everyone. I'm an Upper West Sider for exactly 35 years. Been here my whole life, except for when I was defending my country. I want to say that I've wanted to ask them how many studies were done about converting Central Park to a northbound and southbound traffic. I wanted to know why that can't be done. I believe that the bike lanes in existence on Columbus and Amsterdam are more than sufficient. And if you're on a bike, I can't see why you can't make it to your destination by using those 2 avenues. You're going to be putting people out that need this parking. And once again, that was a great point that half of the time of the year, those parking spots will be useless because of the winter. And also think that it should be postponed until people are home to make these votes. I think it was done very nefariously. Thank you.
Next speaker is Aiden Morstein. Sorry, people, bad handwriting, it's got it. 360 Central Park West, Adine. Okay, so Laura Jenkins, are you here? Okay. Last speaker, we're going to read the names of everybody else who is in the against pile, so you can stand up, but this is the last speaker for this group.
Hi, everybody. I am a resident of Central Park West and 64th for 12 years now. I'm also a mom to a child, so I've also had to deal with this whole change and how horrible it is as a pedestrian to walk through these bike lanes, because now you have to walk through one set of traffic and then another. It's very dangerous. I hate them. I literally hate them. Also, I am a middle-class person. I am not rich. I know a lot of people have made comments that people with cars here are rich. That is garbage. I have a garbage old Pontiac. And if that's how it is, if only rich people get to park, then how about every shitty car can park wherever the hell it wants? But removing these 400 spots is such a horrifying economic impact on families that are already struggling. A lot of Upper West Side parents are struggling just to survive. Now that we've added congestion pricing, the subways do not work properly. I go constantly borough to borough and I have a child. It's very hard and I can't afford not to have my car. And the parking garages anywhere near me are $500, $600, and $800 a month. I cannot afford that. What are you doing for residents when the subways aren't accessible? Because they're not. For moms and strollers, we cannot go there. We need our parking spots. Do not take away our parking spots. That's the middle class.
Okay, so, right here. So those who did not get to speak but came and tried to speak, we apologize. Will Pepe, Margot Milliman, Ilya Elazarman, and Gabriel Moran. And please forgive me, I promise to mispronounce just as many names on the other side.
And all those names will be in the minutes, right? Yeah, so. Yeah.
So, Chelsea Yamada will speak first, then Navona Friedman, then Ben McElwain. Do we have, yeah, make your way forward. This is Chelsea. Okay, where's Chelsea? Okay.
If your name is Joan Dean, Willow Stelzer, Andres Taransky, Casey Rice, or Lisa Orman, we would like to cede our time to you, and I will start with Joan Dean from Families for Safe Streets.
My name is Joan Dean. I live at 25 Central Park West. I'm a member of Families for Safe Streets, a group of individuals who lost loved ones or who were seriously injured by traffic violence. This is my grandson, Sammy. He was killed by a reckless driver in 2013. It's still hard for me to talk about it. Sammy was 12 and a half. He was preparing for his bar mitzvah. He was smart, he was charming, he was articulate, and a high achiever. Our family has been devastated. I'm here today to support a protected bike lane on Central Park West. I'm here for Madison Lydon, a 23-year-old Australian tourist on a trip that she said was a trip of a lifetime. Madison Lydon died on Central Park West because the city failed her. Madison was forced to maneuver out of the bike lane on Central Park West when a taxi blocked her, and then a garbage truck killed her. There was a protected bike lane on Central Park West. Madeline would still be alive today. Her father, Andrew Lydon, quote, said, Madison was a beautiful, beautiful daughter. She was loyal and loving. Madison Lydon did not have to die. Let's get this done. Thank you.
Okay, people, your applause is making fewer people can talk. Chelsea Yamada, then Navona Friedman, then McElwain after that.
Hi, my name is Navona. I'm a lifelong resident on Central Park West, and I recognize and realize that I do not own the street for parking. Parking is for everyone, for no one. I mean, it's just so crazy. I had a speech plan, but people clapping about a dead person. You guys are supposed to be my neighbors. You're supposed to protect my life and care about me as a person. People here really value parking over our neighbors and friends' lives. Oh my God. Like, it's unbelievable. We need bike lanes. We need people to stay alive on the streets. Show me some respect and show a dead person some respect, for God's sake. My building and my fellow neighbors want this protected bike lane because we care about the people in our community, pedestrians, cyclists, and everyone alike. And I just hope everyone here will do the neighborly thing and think about that in the way I do.
Thank you. Ben McElwain, Seth Polnick, and Megan Morris after that.
Is Willow here? I'm ceding my time to her. Chelsea, there we are.
My name is Willow Stelzer, and I'm a resident on West 90th, between Central Park West and Columbus. But I'm here to read a statement from Madison's mother. It's almost been a year since we lost our daughter, Madison Jane Lydon. She was smart, adventurous, and beautiful. She was hit and killed while riding her bicycle along Central Park West last August. It is impossible to convey the feeling of losing a child. A bike lane that was fully separated from moving traffic would have kept Madison out of harm's way. If the delay is because some New Yorkers are concerned about the loss of parking spaces, we beg to know, is a parking space really worth the cost of another life? Hard as it might seem, we will travel from Australia to spend August 11th at the site of our beautiful baby left this life. Please, we beg of you, don't let us see Central Park West in the same dangerous condition that led to Madison's death.
Thank you. Seth Polnick, Megan Morris, and then Bethany Davis Knoll. Seth Polnick here. Seth Polnick, speak out. Okay, Megan Morris, Bethany Davis Knoll, and Jeff Print.
Hello, everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Megan Morris. I'm a very new Lincoln Square resident. I made the big move all the way across the park with my partner a few weeks ago. And we are really looking forward to making the Upper West Side our home. We anticipate buying an apartment here in a few years, raising our kids here. But it's increasingly hard for me to imagine taking kids to the park when there are really difficult intersections. I hear the folks here who are against the bike lanes because they think it makes intersections more difficult to cross. I actually think the opposite. I've noticed when I've been nannying, it's very hard for me to push a stroller across the intersection when I can't see some of the oncoming traffic. Picture if you are standing at that intersection trying to go west, you can't see the cars and the bikers approaching because of those parked cars. If all of us, those who are able-bodied, those with disabilities, could have more visibility into these intersections, I think that benefits a lot of folks. I understand the car parking issues, but there are real matters of visibility here that I think that this bike lane could solve. Thank you.
Bethany Davis Knoll, Jeff Print, Dean O'Neill.
Hi, my name is Bethany Davis Knoll. I live at 104th and Central Park West. I ride my bike in the bike lane up Central Park West every single day. I always stop at the red lights. And I have 2 kids on my bike. They are 4 and 7. And I would feel a lot safer if there was a protected bike lane there. Right now, every day going home, there is always someone parked in the bike lane. I am always forced out into the traffic or have to stop with cars whipping by me. It feels extremely dangerous. And I just want to be safe. Thank you.
Thank you. Jeff Grant, Dean O'Neill, George Bean.
I would like to cede my time to Lisa Orman.
Why don't you call Lisa up?
Lisa? You want it now? Okay. Lisa Orman.
Sue, were there 2 that
Hi,
ceded to
first
her?
I'd like to just see who is here to support this plan. Yeah, thank you. My name is Lisa Orman. I'm the director of Streetopia Upper West Side. We are grateful to the board and the DOT for presenting a protected bike lane plan tonight. We want the plan to be even stronger. While LPIs and dedicated turn lanes are important for pedestrians and bicyclists at the most dangerous intersections, they are not enough. Without split phases, southbound drivers will still primarily be looking for gaps in motor vehicle traffic and will be less likely to look for walkers and bikers when they do find a gap. We need split phases at these intersections. Second, Central Park West is a busy bus route, as you said. The current DOT plan for bus stops is a recipe for disaster. A safer plan would allow for a continuous green protected bike lane at the curb and a floating bus rider platform in the buffer zone. We still need loading zones to ease traffic congestion and reduce double parking. Despite what you've heard from parkers here tonight, the vast majority of Upper West Siders don't own cars and don't park on the streets. Regardless, the curb is public space and should be dedicated to the best and highest use, which is definitely not free parking.
And then Dean O'Neill, George Bean, Jonathan Ratchett. Is Dean O'Neill here? Okay, George Bean. After George Bean will be Jonathan Ratchett and Aline Meyer. I know I messed that name up. I'm sorry.
3 cyclists were killed in New York City in the last week. Mayor de Blasio said that there should be a crackdown on reckless drivers, issue more tickets. Tickets will not solve this problem. Infrastructure will, protected bike lanes will. Parking private cars in a public space is a valuable privilege for some New Yorkers. But the right to safe streets that's a real right for so many New Yorkers, all kinds of New Yorkers, pedestrians, old people, young people, cyclists. I was run over about 8 years ago by a hit and run driver on Amsterdam Avenue while this community board was deliberating on and on for the protected bike lane. If there had been a protected bike lane, I would not have been run over and other people would not have been hit too. There are thousands of cyclists and many more who are coming.
Thank you very much. After Jonathan Ratchett will be Aline Meyer, 207 West 86, because I might be saying your name wrong, and David Vassar after that.
Good evening. My name is Jonathan Ratchett. I would like to concede my time to Casey. My name is Jonathan Ratchett. I would like to concede my time to Casey Rice.
Casey Rice here. Okay, hurry up.
Okay, hello, my name is Casey Rice. I'm a pedestrian, I'm a senior citizen, and I know how to cross the street. With the light. I know that the protected bike lane has made me safer crossing Amsterdam Avenue and other streets where they have it. I cross Central Park West several times a day, and I now have this on my bag so that cars see me. But there are so many people who are anxious to make a turn onto Central Park West and have stopped literally a yard and a half from me when I'm, well into the middle of the intersection. And I think that everyone, like everyone else, a few parking places does not equal a life.
Okay, Anne-Lee Meyer from 207 West 86. Anne-Lee Meyer, are you there? David Vassar, after David, Andreas Turansky. We did Jeff Krant, yes? Yeah, we did Jeff, sorry. And after that, Thurston Bowmaster. Boy, I killed that one.
Hi, everyone. I live in Morningside Heights. My name's David. 5 days a week, I ride down the Columbus Avenue bike lane, which is fantastic. It's what makes dealing with Columbus Avenue possible at all. A guy my age, eyesight, not improving at all. So the Central Park West redesign looks fantastic. Let's do it. It's, for those of you who have ridden a bike in the city, it's fantastic. And what makes it possible and what will keep the cyclists coming, as well as other forms of transportation, the skateboarders, the scooters, the other alternatives to cars, which we really need on our city streets. Protected bike lanes makes it all possible. It's a far, far better use of that public space, and it is public space, than the storage of privately owned automobiles. Let's do this. Let's make this stretch one wing of a bike network encircling the entire park. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. Then Thurston Bowmaster, you know who you are? Okay. And me, Ruby.
Hi, my name is Andreas Turansky, and I come representing myself and my family. My son Kai, who you can see here, is now 17. He's spoken at these meetings before. And my mother, who's 77, lives in my building, and she can't be here right now. I live on 92nd Street in Columbus, and my girlfriend just moved me, and she happens to be in Australia. I hope that none of us get hit. I just really, really am ashamed that anybody would think a public giveaway of a car would be worth my son's life, or my girlfriend's life, or my mother's life. My mother walks across streets. She takes her dog to walk in Central Park every day. The DOT, based on statistics, says that there's a 1/5 reduction, a chance that she would get killed, or my son would get killed, even if they were never on a bike. We should actually call them pedestrian lanes. Thank you.
Ruby after him, and Lisa Orman spoke. Joan Dean after that. Oh, she spoke. Thank you.
Hi, I'd just like to say that I've been a resident, despite my accent, on the Upper West Side for 30 years. Of that, almost 20 on Central Park West itself. As a resident and a cyclist, I strongly support a dedicated bike lane. I ride between 50 and 200 miles a week, and I always try and do it on dedicated bicycle lanes because of the inherent danger that the police actually pointed out very well earlier in the session. So I strongly believe that this is a public good. It gives a great transit route from people uptown to from downtown uptown, and it's also a great access route for people wanting to ride inside the park. And so it's a public good.
Okay, thank you very much. Reed Ruby, Nancy DiFrancesco, Noam, and Kogan.
Good evening. I'd like to thank DOT for a fine presentation. I know you did a lot of analysis and came up with a great design. When Willow was giving the statement from Madison's mother, as we were sitting down, there was a call from someone in the back that said, accidents happen. I suppose accidents do happen, but this wasn't an accident. This was a crash. And there's a difference between a crash, which is preventable, and an accident, which, just happens. So I also heard a lot of opinions tonight about what's safe and what's not safe. And, I don't know, who should I believe? Well, this I know. DOT uses data. And I never used to use data, but now I understand data is important. Data can tell you where to put your efforts. Here are 1,000 signatures in support of this bike lane from Transportation Alternatives.
Nancy DiFrancesco, Noam Kogan, Ryan Hoberman. Is Nancy DiFrancesco here? Okay, thank you. Noam Kogan, Ryan Hoberman, and Samir Lavingia.
Noam Kogan. I am in favor of the bike lanes. I'd like to see it akin to what is the case at Christie Street south of Houghton Street, and I'll see the remainder of my time to Chelsea Yamada. She turned it down. Well, I'm in support of this thing, and we need to get this done and save lives, damn it.
Ryan Hoberman.
I have to say that as a cyclist, I've lived at 97th and Amsterdam for 15 years, and the protected bike lane on Amsterdam and Columbus has done wonders. But on Central Park West, I fear when I cycle on it, as the DOT has shown with their statistics, protected bike lanes are safer. As the NYPD officer earlier said, they are in favor of protected bike lanes, and 97% of collisions on the Upper West Side involve cars only or cars and pedestrians, not cyclists. So anyone who argues otherwise, it's not in reality. And it reminds me of climate change deniers. And speaking of climate change, cyclists don't pollute, and cars do. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Last speaker is Samir Lavinja. Okay, after that, we will, after that, we will read every name of a person who filled out a form with our apologies. We don't have any more time, but your name will be read into the record.
Not everybody on the other side got to speak either. We have some limits.
Hello, I'm Samir Lavingia, and I'm here to support this plan. As someone said earlier, one of the most horrifying things about being about to walk into a crosswalk is you're about to step in, and guess what? A car just zooms on by, and guess what? If it hits you, you're dead. You're just straight up dead. If a bike hits you, maybe there's a chance you survive. It's very likely. Well, guess what? 97% of these collisions are with cars. They are not with bikers. The cars will kill you if they hit you. 97% of them hit you. Anyways, the other thing I wanted to say is just I really appreciate the crosswalk pedestrian islands that the DOT is putting in. It shortens the crossing distance. It makes it safer to cross. When I walk with my mother, she can't walk as fast as I can, and being able to stop, take that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. There are a number of people who signed up to speak. I apologize. They are Gary Pelton, Josh Pinkerton, Danielle Atha, Casey Rice, Tuck Edelston, Mindy Haskell, Maggie Bradley, Andy Olesker, Ken Edwards, Margaret Harbo, Alec Barrett, Melanie Bryant, Families for Safe Streets, Erwin Warren, Rebecca Leung, Barry Kahn, Bill Amstutz, Kenneth Ritvo, Henry Reinhardt, almost through, Vivian Min, Eugene Sorensen. Thank you all for signing up. It is now time for board discussion. We have a limited amount of time also for board discussion, so board members, please do your very, very best to only speak once, say exactly what you mean, and say it loudly. Okay, so you want to start on the right side over there? Okay, Audrey.
Why don't we just go around?
Does everyone want to? You could go to the far end? Okay, we're gonna go to the far end.
We have half, we're going to, so we're starting at 8, we're going to have the vote at 8.
Wait. If you're gonna go around, then you really should start with the first person and give everyone a shot.
No.
Just start and pass. Just start and pass, and people, please respect 1 minute that we have everyone else do.
I've used the bike lane on Central Park West probably 2 or 3 times a week, and I'm frightened to use it. I think the big issue is the buses at the Museum of Natural History and the sidewalk on either side. Seems to me there's some room for compromise, particularly with the buses that bring children to the Museum of Natural History. And that I would be interested in, but I believe that this bike lane to be protected is very important for safety.
And I just add that DOT has worked out a plan with the museum. DOT has worked out a plan with for the biking.
The buses, but not in that street. Plan.
We're working out a plan.
Wait, sorry, right there.
Just to clarify, we are currently working out a plan where we think we're going to be able to maintain the existing operation of the buses on that side of the park. There's some details that still need to be ironed out, but as soon as we have more, we're going to share it with the community board, our elected officials. The museum residents have been in touch with Steve Anderson from 81st Street and others, but that is absolutely a concern that we know about and we're trying to work through.
The plan is not ready to, they don't have the plan yet.
Hi, I'm a resident here on Central Park West. I've lived here for over 15 years. I feel very strongly that safety needs to be the basis of all things that happen in our public realm. But that's safety for everybody. And I understand a lot of the conversations about enforcement for bikers and other people on feet and wheels to obey the law. We need stronger education for that to happen. But I wanted to just share a really quick story. Last August, I was riding with my son, who's 12, and we're riding in the bike lane. And there was a person in a large vehicle trying to park and was parked and pulled into the bike lane right in front of me. I had to stop, put my hand on his car because I fell into his car as he brushed by me. And he slammed on his brakes and said, "Hey, don't hit my car." And I said, "Excuse me, don't park in the bike lane." And I got back on my bike and started moving on. Well, he sped up and he went right up to my back tire, tapped it lightly. I fell off my bike and he sped off in rage. Thank God it wasn't my 12-year-old son. I only had a couple bruises and scrapes. But this is something that happens far too often. We need safety for our bikers, our pedestrians, and our vehicles. We need safety for all.
I believe that you've made, especially near the museum, it's safer, but it's still not safe. It's too dangerous to ride a bike in that area. And if you put there's no school buses now, but when the school buses and the tourist buses are there, if they're in the bike lane, it's going to be less safe for pedestrians because they'll jaywalk between two buses, large buses, and the northbound traffic will not be able to see them until it's too late. I believe a better idea is to make the Columbus Avenue bike lane, which is not really utilized enough, into 2 lanes, south and north, and make it wider, and that would be safer for bicyclists as well as pedestrians.
With all of the city bike racks along Central Park West, it appears to be an endorsement to ride bikes. If the city, and it appears that the endorsement comes from the city government. If you were going to have all those bike racks along Central Park West, then you have to give the people, especially those from out of town, out of the country, a safe place to ride. You can't trick them into getting on a bike when they are ignorant of the traffic patterns in New York City and then expose them to danger. It's not fair, it's not right, and by the way, the city could experience liability legally.
We've committed ourselves to Vision Zero, and it's a challenge plan, and that it's something that it's in the best interest of the city, all aspects, visitors and pedestrians and residents. And we've already posited bike, and I think that it's oversimplification perhaps, but if you posit the bike lanes, you want to posit also that you want to protect these bike lanes wherever possible. It is in the general interest, and then it's something we just have to stay with, and something we have to work on in the partnerships that we have right now with the MTA and the community.
I have a deep concern about the process that we're involved in now. I feel that the board is being asked to make a decision on an extremely important issue in this community with a dearth of information. I think the main responsibility lies with the Department of Transportation. I read unfortunately I couldn't be at the Transportation Committee meeting, but when I read the minutes, it struck me that in the recitation of the facts that the committee considered, what struck me is the facts that the city did not consider. For example, it didn't consider the alternative of eliminating the bike lane on Central Park West and enhancing a protected bike lane in what is now a car-free Central Park directly adjacent to it. It didn't consider referencing the fact that we have a protected bike lane on Amsterdam Avenue, that we have a pathway along the Greenway, along Hudson River, all of which are accessible to cyclists within a very limited period of time. The other thing is that whereas the presentation at the committee meeting by DOT referenced the fact that they were eliminating 400 plus parking spots, there was no discussion of the availability or affordability of where all those automobiles were going to go, the environmental impact of eliminating all those parking spots, the impact on transient parking for all of the cultural institutions along Central Park West, etc. There was no consideration of the impact of congestion pricing. There was no consideration of the possible implementation of residential parking permits. There are so many issues where we have no information whatsoever. We don't even have data being presented as to the usage of the existing bike lane along Central Park West. So, Roberta, you tell me what the schedule is. I am going to propose an amendment to the resolution that's being offered. You tell me when I can do it.
Now. Yeah, you should do it now. You have to do it now. Yeah.
Maybe he should speak after the amendment. So our original presentation.
Our presentation to the Transportation Committee last month included a variety of data. We're happy to show what we prepared and discussed. It's also online. We had a thorough conversation during the actual discussion. I haven't read the minutes about many of the items that you touched base on. One of the things that your first point, why didn't we think about removing a bike lane from Central Park West, was because this community board asked us to look at installing a two-way protected bicycle lane along Central Park West. And we were unable to do that because of all of the traffic challenges. The same reason someone earlier had asked, did we look at making Central Parkway either one way north or one way south? And we did. And having that impact on the congestion within the community would have been truly Armageddon. And that would decrease safety for all roadway users. So what we are presenting tonight is a plan that we think is actually going to maintain traffic flow. We are not removing a lane of traffic in either direction. Everything that is out there on Central Park West today will remain as part of this plan from a traffic perspective. So all of our, excuse me, we are we are maintaining 2 lanes of traffic in each direction. The space that we would be removing if we move forward with this plan is the parking lane along the east side of Central Park West. But from a traffic flow standpoint, we actually think some of the transverse will be improved based on the signal timing changes that we would be pursuing, as well as some of the turning lanes. Again, we have a lot more information. I'm happy to answer questions now or later, but a lot of this has been studied and was discussed at the committee.
May I respond?
Take the resolution.
I beg your pardon? You know, we meet once a month, and it's a very important issue. I think all of the members of the board should have an opportunity to be heard fully. Anyway, I propose the following amendment. And you'll have to decide whether in fact it's a substitute resolution or an amendment. We can couch it either way. I propose the following, that the DOT within 6 months prior to the start of any construction of a protected bicycle lane, complete a study including the impact of the elimination of 400 parking spots on both resident and transient parking, including traffic flow, including the availability and affordability of alternate parking, including the impact on commercial traffic, including the possible implementation of residential parking permits, and including the possibility of licensing cyclists and registering bikes, including the impact of congestion pricing and any environmental impact on air quality, and including the data on the use and the feasibility of eliminating the bike lane and directing bikers into Central Park or to Amsterdam Avenue. And I just want to comment that the department, you people are the experts. The fact that the community, and I have to say that a study of bike lanes on Central Park West and the alternatives because of the terrible tragedies that occurred there is entirely appropriate. What concerns me is that we're being asked to vote on this serious issue with half the information that we need to do so. And I don't think putting it off for a few months to get that information should be objectionable.
Is there a second? That's a substitute motion.
This is a substitute motion because it's so different than the.
Yes, and it's been seconded.
And it must be discussed and voted on prior to.
I fully understand, Shelley.
We're gonna spend 10 minutes discussing, we have
Let's just
a
keep
full
going around.
agenda tonight.
Let's just keep going around.
Okay, who, in addition to Ethel?
Other people to speak. Let's have 2 more and then 2 again.
Yeah, I would like to speak in support of Jay's substitute motion. There are many points that are valid, that are essential in what he stated, and I would add several others. And it is worth our time to do this. And among them are, in addition to what Jay stated, the use of the bike lanes on Columbus and Amsterdam, the general usage, the capacity, in fact, to expand those among other alternatives. He already mentioned the question of the use of the park and other things. Above all, feelings run high and tragedies are horrible, and we all are deeply affected by them. We are in a long time modification of the way we are functioning in this city. We're at the end of the use of the car in the way it's been used, and probably that is a good thing for all the reasons that we know. We're in a long transition. The bikes are good in many ways. They have not worked well. That doesn't mean they won't,
but they are often in conflict with pedestrians. Enforcement has not been adequate. Education has not been adequate. And we, and with all respect to DOT, has not designed our streets to accommodate the bikes and above all, who are at the top of our priorities, and that is first, pedestrians. And in the category of pedestrians are small children, older people, and everybody else. And then we go to all the other priorities. So I believe that we're a good community board and good work has been done. We should outline what we want to know, what we need to know, and spend the time, maybe it's 6 months, and with all due respect to your very detailed study, which perhaps the committee has dealt with, this can be summarized, put together so that we, the full board, can evaluate it correctly and do our duty to the public and to the diverse interests here. I support the substitute resolution.
I'm Sarah Lind. I agree with a lot of what Ethel said, but I do not support the substitute resolution for a few reasons. One, the information, the detailed information that DOT provided has been publicly available for almost a month. So if anyone had concern, they had time. Since our committee meeting, it has been publicly available online. So if anyone has had concerns about the information, they had plenty of time to look into that and to ask follow-up questions before this meeting, which is part of our role as a community board, is to prepare for the meetings by looking at the minutes, by seeing what's going to be on the agenda, and being prepared to discuss it. I also want to say that I think that the should be implemented as quickly as possible. We've been discussing this for almost a year already. We've had discussions about this at committee meetings. So again, if people had concerns about this, there's been plenty of time to give input. It's important to note that if something is very off about this bike lane, we can put it back. Nothing permanent is being done. There's no cement being put in. Excuse me, please have respect. It can be put back. On the other hand, if someone else dies in the current way that bike lane is, that can't be taken back. So let's put the protected bike lane in. With more study and more analysis, if we decide it wasn't the right move, we can do something different.
Nice kill. Are we ready to vote?
We're voting on the amendment, right?
Your hand just went up, Shelley. Your hand just went up. Two more people.
There are a few good things about the proposal. One, that protected bike lanes are the safest method and practice in terms of saving lives and protecting people. And the two lanes is good too. We see here tonight that there are many issues that have not been addressed, and that large parts of the community who we represent ourselves, didn't know a lot of this, and there's tremendous contention. To institute something that's supposed to be helpful with this type of contention is destructive. It's destructive to the community. Delaying it is not going to hurt anybody, because if you don't know what I got hit by, so please don't tell me about anything. I'll reiterate, if people are concerned about people dying, getting hit, for the meantime, tell them to use Central Park, tell them to use the other two bike lanes, and not to use Central Park West.
Yes, so I would support the substitute resolution, because while I was obviously at Transportation Committee last month, there was a lot of information that we did not get from DOT that I think we should have and are entitled to, such as, have they done a study where all of the traffic perusing, looking for parking that's being eliminated will be going? Is that going to cause a safety hazard by people driving around endlessly looking for parking? When have they looked at a potential residential parking permit trial for this neighborhood, which, when congestion pricing comes, is going to be essential for us most likely. So there's a lot of information we need to know. And by the way, everyone is a pedestrian, whether you bike, whether you use mass transit or drive. At some point, we're all pedestrians, and pedestrians have to be the tantamount, the most paramount concern. And I think we need more info from DOT. I really do.
Okay, as committee chair, I haven't spoken yet, and I generally try not to. I try to stay neutral, but I would like to point out to everybody that we will never have all the information. We never have all the facts. We live in New York. We're experienced. I listen to you.
This is a discussion among board members right now.
Okay. And then, while we do want the community to be as well informed as possible, our job is to represent them, not to educate. We represent.
And educate.
Thank you. While I don't think we need a study to tell us things that the comments that we've heard tell us that we already know. We know that there are going to be 400 parking places displaced or parkers displaced by this program. I personally have significant empathy for those folks for many of the reasons why we heard in the testimony. On balance, I think that this plan is the right plan, but not because there's something wrong with somebody who has a car to park, but because in a limited space and in a limited series of trade-offs, we know that that is necessary to achieve the 21% reduced pedestrian injuries. And I think this is misnamed as a bike facility because first and foremost, the people that benefit are the pedestrians. I have two quick, please, no, stop. Please. So I don't think we need a study to know that it's going to be difficult for the folks who need to find parking. I don't think we need a study to find out that there are usage differences depending on whether a lane is protected or not protected. I don't think we need a study to prove any. The statement is itself the conclusion. And I think the last point I'll add, which I think is a new point, is we're not done. We take a vote here at CB7 from time to time, but we are never done. And we know that because residential parking may very well be an answer to some of what we're confronting now. Ideally, we would do all that once, but this is in front of us. And we take votes on things that are in front of us, and I think that that's appropriate. And I think that with all empathy for pedestrians who are fearful of bikes, and I get it, that the safer we make everything, if you have a place for everyone on the street, then you are more likely to have everyone behaving better. It will never be done. We're going to have to come back to this issue. We're going to have to confront problems both anticipated and not. And that's why we make the big bucks.
So we have an imminent public safety hazard. One person has already been killed. We know that Central Park West is by far the most dangerous north-south corridor for cyclists. Since July of 2012, which is the start of publicly available data from NYPD, which is available online and which I've been tracking closely, there have been 142 cyclists injured on Central Park West. This is more than the 125 cyclist injuries on Broadway, which overall is our most dangerous north-south corridor with a total of 790 injuries. Last year, 21 cyclists were injured on Central Park West, in addition to Madison Leiden being killed. This is 21% of the 100 cyclist injuries in our district in 2018. Second was Amsterdam with 12, which was just over half as many as Central Park West. The other thing is, even if we wanted cyclists to ride on other corridors, we don't have a way of telling them that Central Park West is potentially lethal and they shouldn't use it. We can't put up signs saying, don't ride here, it's too dangerous. Also, the Department of Transportation, to their credit, has put in an extraordinary amount of work. For those of us who were at the Transportation Committee meeting, which was a public meeting, they presented extensive data. They showed the extensive analysis they did on traffic patterns, on a number of different routes that they, different options that they considered and ultimately rejected. And and I'm the first to say that DOT doesn't always do perfect work. And I criticize them for their proposal for the rotunda, which Ed gives me nasty looks for. But in this case, I was very convinced in their presentation that this is enormously challenging. There is no easy option here, but we have an imminent public safety hazard, and they came up with what I think is the best of the pretty bad options. The other thing I want to point out is that there's no other agency that's responsible for public safety, whether it's the health department, the police department, the fire department, that has to come here and go to community boards on matters of public safety. Here we have an issue of known public safety. We know that DOT has done an extensive amount of work. If we go back and ask for more studies, we're just delaying the imposition of safety measures. We're putting more people at risk, and we know there will be more injuries, and they're likely, as Deputy Inspector Mallon says, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. We're risking lives if we delay this and ask for more studies, especially because a lot of that work was already done and already presented to us.
Thank you.
We
have to take a vote.
We can delay this as long as we want, but we're going to come down to the same choice: parking over a safer street. And we as community board members have to make often difficult public policy choices. We have a limited amount of space. We have a lot of users of the street, and we have to think about what is the best use and what are our priorities. If we delay this vote, every week, either a pedestrian or a cyclist is struck by a vehicle, on average, on Central Park West, if you look at the numbers. So if we delay this vote 1 week, that's another person who could potentially be killed and certainly will be injured. So I'm opposed to the substitute.
My name is Paige Cowley, and I did go to the Transportation Committee meeting. I don't usually go there, but this is a subject that I don't know very much about, but I know about planning as an architect. And one of the things that I like about the substitute resolution is that the one thing that I heard at the first meeting 3 weeks ago is how this whole plan is going to interconnect. Because what I'm worried about, being a West Sider, we tend to break things down into pieces. We did Amsterdam and then Columbus, and now we're looking at Central Park. I'm very much in support of the bike lane. But tonight I heard a few things from both sides. One is in England, where I lived for many years, bike lanes are lifted up. So they're even on a different surface. You don't need a lot of barricades because they're kids. I heard about mothers with kids on the back of their bike. They wobble. I'm worried about the plastic nature of a quick curb because if that's hit by a car or a bike, it could hurt somebody even more. So I don't want it to delay forever because I will come back here and I will cast my vote for the same work that you've done. But I think it needs to have a few more ingredients and show how these bike lanes interconnect with the rest of the city. Because I've seen them careening around, and now with e-scooters, these no hands-on scooters, they're just wheels, all these things, what are they called? No, they're just, David Letterman had, I'm dating myself, unicycles type things. So the issue here is that I think we're so close to making the right decisions. I'm just not sure that the bike lane and its protective accessories are in the right place. And I would ask that to support Jay's amendment and look at some of these things. Maybe some of the boxes are already checked. Jay, they did do a great job when I sat through it. But I think I'm not comfortable tonight voting until I see a master plan of how the network is gonna happen. Thank you.
I think you did.
Okay, I think that DOT did a fantastic job of doing this, but the explanation, I am curious about why you did not consider within the park. And is that because there are people who will be bicycling on Central Park West no matter what? Yes.
They've got it done, why not? Just because people didn't hear it.
Absolutely. To your point, to one that Rich made earlier, if we took away of the existing bicycle lane on Central Park West, there will still be cyclists out there tomorrow. And one of the things as an agency we want to do is give dedicated space to the dedicated users, because it does enhance safety overall when vehicles know where they're supposed to be, where pedestrians or cyclists know where they're supposed to be, and when pedestrians know where to look for both. The trouble with the park is it's used every day, as all of you know, tremendous amount of recreation. We're looking to actually connect for rides within your neighborhood. It is not as convenient as riding down or up Central Park West. Again, if we are concerned with increasing cyclist safety on Central Park West, one great way to do it is to install a protected bicycle lane on the north direction. That is the thing. We absolutely looked at all sorts of potential iterations for this plan. And what we settled on was a compromise about making it a one-way path going northbound, which was not what was initially asked of us, but we felt it struck the appropriate balance for the entire corridor and all of its users.
Well, I have a possible compromise, is we need a protected bike lane, we need it now, but we also have questions. And it is possible that there are changes that can be made and that further down, we could change things. So is it possible to do both?
How much money do we have to do that?
But also go ahead now and put in these barriers that are necessary.
That is exactly what the resolution says. Yes.
Point of information, we're discussing a substitute. Point of information.
Okay.
We are discussing a substitute motion that precludes that. So let's continue talking about the substitute motion and vote on
I'm
it.
sorry, that precludes what?
Precludes adding in what we're going to do, like undoing it.
In the original.
Right, but we're now discussing the
We're
amendment.
talking about delaying the implementation.
No delay. So that would be another. No.
No, it's the same one.
It's the same one. We're trying to discuss how to do this. It's the same one.
You have to vote on the substitute motion.
First, we have to vote
All right,
on Jay.
we can vote before I speak, and then I can speak. But, look, I remember sitting, I don't know if it was this room or some other room, voting the first time on the unprotected bike lane at Central Park West, which I voted against for the very reasons that have become obvious, that it's not safe. So there is no question, I agree with the deputy inspector, that either we have a bike lane on Central Park West that's protected, or we don't have a bike lane on Central Park West. I am not convinced, however, that, and by the way, I'm extremely sympathetic to parkers. I think it's unfair to blame parkers. They own cars, they've been parking in New York on the streets for as long as I've been alive, and they have very few alternatives, and some people need cars. But I would still, I think safety is more important than parking. But I am not convinced by the argument that the northbound bike traffic can go on in Central Park. It is, of course, possible that people will ride their bikes on Central Park, just as they do on West End Avenue, I suppose. But it is a fair compromise to alleviate what will be an unbelievably congested northbound Central Park West because of all the buses, because of all the double parked cars, It is not going to be 2 lanes of traffic going north. It's going to be it will create a nightmare. And I think that while having a protected bike lane northbound in Central Park is not perfect, we don't live in a perfect city. And it is a reasonable compromise that at least should be seriously studied. No, wait a minute. By the way, I don't necessarily need a delay. I've already made up my mind that it can be done, but some people haven't. And finally, this is not to the substitute motion, but I won't speak after the substitute motion. Having Central Park West is one of the most iconic streets in New York City, maybe the world. Having plastic bollards up and down the length of Central Park West is insane. It destroys the beauty of the park. There are other ways to protect the bike lanes, such as an elevated curb, but those bollards will destroy all of the historic preservation that this board is so concerned
with. Is this, oh, I'm sorry, Clyde. Okay, so we're gonna take Clyde's, 3 people? Okay, you guys are springing up like mushrooms.
Yes, on the substitute, I wasn't going to say anything, but in light of the most recent part of the discussion, I do want to. First of all, I completely agree with the people who have opposed the substitute motion. I urge my colleagues to vote against the substitute motion and to bring to the vote. And if you want to vote against the main motion, you could do so, but the main resolution, but I urge people not to vote for the substitute resolution. I wanted to address Central Park, though, for a minute because people have spoken, or for 5 seconds, people have spoken about turning the West Drive in Central Park into even more of a bike lane than it is now. I spend a fair amount of time in Central Park. I spend a fair amount of time stopping and looking at how people use Central Park. I spend a fair amount of time, even as a sophisticated pedestrian in Central Park, already concerned about the safety issues between cyclists and the many clueless or even clueful pedestrians in Central Park and other users as well. So I think the idea of turning any part of the West Drive into an official bike lane is a non-starter for safety reasons, safety of cyclists, safety of pedestrians. We either do or don't do a protected bike lane on Central Park West, but it's completely unrealistic, as I think the DOT concluded, completely unrealistic to think that turning the West Drive into Central Park itself could be a safe substitute alternative.
I think William has his hand up. No. You did. Okay, you're right. You did. Thank you. Sorry.
No, that's fine. Yeah. I'm a public health professional, and while we as individuals, as humans, have individual experiences and our families have experiences that inform how we feel about everyday life, as a public health professional, I believe in the use of population data and evidence-based decision-making to inform these decisions. As others have mentioned, DOT's full proposal and plan included many of the data points that people are asking about today. They were presented in detail at an overflowing public meeting nearly a month ago. They were also available on CB7's website. That committee also asked many questions about can we continue to revisit this in the future? I strongly oppose the substitute resolution because I think instead the original resolution, which already includes language to revisit this, and there was also discussion about revisiting when congestion pricing goes into effect and to continually monitor with opportunities to improve in the future is really important. So I strongly oppose the substitute resolution.
So I'm someone who bikes all the time. I bike along Amsterdam, Columbus. I biked over here for the meeting today. And one of the things that I'm concerned about with the bike lane is it turning into a highway bike lane. So I know that my fellow riders tend to ignore red lights and they follow pedestrians. So the only area that I could see where they could potentially slow down would be 66th Street, 86th Street, and 96th Street where you go across town. But I'm concerned with other pedestrians and kids who are gonna be crossing every other street and these guys are gonna go flying through. The only way to be safe is to ride safely. And if the bike lane is there, maybe we need a speeding sign for the bikers too. Because it's just gonna be more dangerous even if we build this thing too, potentially, so.
So as we prepare to vote on the substitute motion, we need to know what we would be voting on the other side of. The resolution as written has be it further resolved that CB7 Manhattan requests the DOT continue to monitor conditions on Central Park West and return in 1 year after the bike lane is installed with updates. And be it further resolved that CB7 Manhattan.
That's not the substitute motion.
No, you cannot vote on the substitute motion if you don't know what the original motion says. Be further resolved that CB7 Manhattan requests that DOT provide appropriate signage and traffic lights for all users, especially cyclists and pedestrians. One more piece of information the DOT just gave me on the side was that if we delay this decision by 3 months, which is perfectly one of the decisions we could make, they will not be able to start on the project until next spring. It will be late in the year.
Now we have it correct.
Okay, Jay, I'm going to, excuse me.
That's outrageous.
Shelley.
It's outrageous what you just did.
What are you talking about?
You presented a threat from the DOT.
It is a fact. It is not a threat. A threat is me saying you cannot talk anymore if you keep interrupting me.
DOT can speak for itself, not present after facts when we're about to vote.
Okay, fine. You just whispered
I-
in my ear 5 minutes. Right ahead and whisper. Or not. That is my concern.
Folks,
We're not interested.
I know many of you haven't worked with me in the past. Some of you have. I will always stand up and tell you the facts as I know it. We could disagree about the values and which way you want to go, but if we wanted to move forward with implementation this year, as was said at the Transportation Committee, and I'm sorry if my colleagues and I didn't make that clear tonight, we would not be able to complete a full Central Park West this year. We think we might get approximately halfway. If there were a delay of 6 months, or even potentially probably fewer, we would not be able to most likely begin implementation this year. Just wanted to add that. It's not a threat. I just wanted to add that as a point of consideration for a board which had asked us to look at this proposal.
Why didn't you present that in the beginning? Why now?
Yes, I'm going to let Jay, would like Jay to, excuse me.
Safety now!
Fine.
Safety now!
Could you please let us do our business? Jay, I would like you to repeat your, as you can.
I feel like I owe the world an apology for stirring up this. But I want to say a couple of things. I have nothing but the utmost respect for my colleagues on this board, regardless of their particular feeling or attitude about my substitute motion or the main motion. And everybody has what I feel is a reasoned and sincere opinion. And I want to make it clear that, number one, I don't generally bicycle and I don't park on Central Park West. So I consider myself a relatively objective party in this discussion. And my main concern, just like my colleagues on this board, is safety. And this safe.
Keep going, keep going.
As I said, my concern is safety. Safety for cyclists, safety for pedestrians, and safety for automobile operators. That should be our prime concern. My concern in drafting and submitting this alternative motion was, and still is, a lack of information. Unfortunately, I was not at the Transportation Committee meeting because I was out of town. And I understand there is some data that was presented there. One of the things that disturbs me the most is the failure of DOT to consider what is now a car-free Central Park as an alternative. And he said at the beginning that they didn't consider it because of the request from Community Board 7 for a two-way bike lane on Central Park West. That's what was said. Yeah, I will, Roberta. You threw me off my thought. Anyway, and statistics on the number of bike accidents and so forth are really not relevant unless we know what the causes are. Half of those statistics can be bicycles crashing into each other, bicycles injuring pedestrians.
Please, you're not helping.
Are you done?
Jay, done.
So anyway, you asked me to read it. I'll read it again. That the DOT within 6 months, and as an aside, if the DOT can do it faster, so be it. And prior to the start of any construction of a protected bike lane, complete a study of the impact of the following: the elimination of the 400+ parking spots on both residents and transients, including projected traffic flow on Central Park West, and the availability and affordability of alternate parking, the effect on commercial traffic, including deliveries, the possible implementation of residential parking permits, the impact of congestion pricing, and any environmental impact on air pollution because of the consequences of establishing this bike lane. And if there are additions to what anybody thinks is appropriate to study, I'm certainly open to it. But that's the gist of the alternate.
We're ready to vote. Point of information from Ethel.
It'll take one, but then I can explain right now.
Since there has been some comment about delay, I just wonder, appreciating all your work and the work of the committee, if we could say in some fashion reasonably, and if the maker of the motion would say that something like 3 to not more than 6 months, or within 3 months, or by, let's say, the October meeting, that would in turn mean that if this were to be passed, we would provide these questions and all to DOT and ask for reasonable replies within 3 months, if that would be helpful as compared to 6 months.
Okay, people, we're going to call the question. I'm going to ask board members and the audience to be respectful and to not shout out and to not whatever. So, who's counting? Amy? All right, you ready?
We're voting on the substitute motion. All those in favor of replacing the original motion with the substitute motion.
No. Don't phrase it that way. Honestly, ask to vote on the substitute. That's the way to phrase it.
I believe.
Exactly.
We're voting on the substitute motion. All those in favor of having the substitute motion, please raise your hands.
Board members
Sorry,
only.
board members only.
Make the motion.
She gets 16. All those against?
Board members only.
Sorry, board members only. One hand only, Richard. All those abstaining? All those abstaining for cause, with cause, not voting for cause. 162400, the motion fails. Are we now ready to vote on the motion? Elizabeth did not speak before.
Exactly, and I'll be really quick. Just one thing that I'd like to see if this could be a friendly amendment to the current resolution, which we're about to vote on, which is just, I think, a year to have the DOT come back is not long enough. I think given the comments of some of the people tonight, making sure that's something that is at a minimum quarterly visits to the Transportation Committee should be put in. Yeah, okay, if that's accepted as well.
The Transportation Committee accepts it.
Yeah, as a member of the committee.
Accepted as a friendly amendment, and that is to change it to not next year, but every quarter for the foreseeable short future.
Until no longer needed.
I have a friendly amendment.
Oh, no.
Hopefully, ask DOT to investigate split phases at all the transfers, intersections. Split
phases.
Okay, left turn, cars going south, making a left, let's say at 86th Street, right now would be turning into pedestrians and cyclists as they're crossing. This would have separate phases for the left turning cars so that it would be impossible or illegal for them to make a left turn while pedestrians or cyclists were going across. So, well, we're just asking them to investigate.
Let's make that as part of the quarterly review. Can we do that? Yeah, I'm not sure.
Right from day one, investigate.
Why would that be friendly?
Yeah, that's a whole nother thing.
It is kind of.
And I think they did investigate it.
Okay.
They did that already,
We'll put
Ken.
it on the agenda for next month and we can add to it at that point. Okay, thank you. Ready to vote. All those in favor of the resolution as slightly amended, please raise your hand.
Can you say it again?
It's in front of you. It's the resolution
to approve
the protected bike lane on Central Park West. The addition, what? Okay, it is the resolution that is in front of you on Central Park West bike lane. The addition to it, or the slight change, is that rather than waiting a year for the Department of Transportation, we asked to come back and report on us. We asked them to monitor it on a quarterly basis and return to us on a quarterly basis for the next year.
Yeah.
Okay.
All those in favor?
All in favor?
Hold your hands up high. If you're not a member, please put your hands down. If you're voting,
Board
put your
members
hands
up. Everyone else hands
Everyone
down.
who's voting, put your hands up.
We're voting in favor. We're doing a second count on the in favor votes on the board only. Yeah, 27. All those opposed, please raise your hand. All those opposed is 7, abstaining. Oh, yeah, you are. 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, down here. There's 4 there.
All right.
And wait, not voting for cause. Are we ready?
2775, the resolution
Here,
passes.
Okay, thank you. Board has more work in front of it tonight. Thank you for all of your comments, both for and against. We value your participation. Please leave if you have no more interest in the rest of the meeting. Thank you. Please leave quietly.
Ken, what was the final vote? 27-5.
27,750.
I mean, it's maybe a lot more advanced
Thanks for taking my quasi.
I can see what you're doing.
People, we have a board meeting. People, I have a very long board meeting. I need everyone to people, attention. I need you to be quiet on the way out. We have a board meeting going on. We are going to the next item on our agenda, which is DCI. Land use, it's land use.
Thank you, everybody. Could you settle down and try to talk outside? You're getting, to our board members, you're getting a revised resolution. It's a little clearer than the one. I know, we're perfect. I said. No, Shelley, I'm worried for your life. The two of you are bad. Okay. Right. So, you're gonna introduce the. You got it up? Oh, I didn't know. We have time.
Are we showing more slides or?
Can you do it in 5 minutes? Did you get the slide?
I know.
Thank you. I just wanted to ask you about the
Oh, no, I'm sorry, Ken. Ken is the chair of Parks Department. He's the best person to talk to.
Congratulations. And the next one, really. I'm kind of happy with the result. You did a great job. You get people moving. Unbelievable. You should run the financial.
Never.
Can we settle down now? Can we settle down, please? 25 Central Park West, also known as the Century Condominium, came to us a couple weeks ago for a very unusual request. And that was what we would call, by shorthand, spot zoning. The issue at hand is an existing building in an R10A that is asking for a change of use for three separate retail spaces
that are grandfathered back to 1931 when Irwin Shannon built the building. And they have been non-conforming as long as they stay not abandoned or vacant, that grandfathered use can continue. The applicant came before us and explained that one of the tenants on the corner of 62nd Street and Fifth Ave and Central Park West, and you're going to see a quick presentation of this, may be vacating. And so in advance of trying to come to us for something retroactive for a physical culture establishment, they came before and asked that the zoning be changed to a C2-5, which permits physical culture establishments and several other types of uses. We were surprised. We have not seen a piece of a building be asked to be changed for zoning to allow this type of use. We felt it was not appropriate. Initially, we debated it because it is Central Park West, because it may set a precedent for other spaces that are currently medical offices and other professionals. I hear you. I'm going to zip through this. So the issue is, and we have the lawyer here, they're going to show you the diagrams and the specific area that's impacted by their application for a change, an amendment to the zoning that will run the full length of the frontage on Central Park West and 100 feet deep into the building. And that is unprecedented. It doesn't, that new line will not conform to the actual lot of the building itself. So take it away, Sheldon and Lobel. Richard from Sheldon and Lobel. Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to keep this to less than 5 minutes, starting now. Good evening. My name is Richard Lobel. I'm from the law firm of Sheldon Lobel PC, and we're here for the property at 25 Central Park West. You can see the area that's in the dotted line, and right now, this is the Century Apartments. It's a 1931 building. It has roughly 425 residential units in this building. It's 33 stories tall, and it doesn't have one thing, a gym. So representatives from the commercial units in this building, these are existing grandfathered commercial units, came to us and said, we want to put a gym here. What do we need to do? And I said, well, you're going to be able to apply for a gym at the BSA, but you can't do that in a use group 6 use, meaning a retail use group. You have to actually put down a commercial overlay for a C25. After doing that, the city will allow you to apply for a gym. We've done this before several times. We've done it down on 1 Van Dam Street, 180 Avenue of the Americas, where we had a commercial use there, but we had to go for a C25 to allow for the commercial overlay. So it's not that you can't do a commercial use on this frontage. You may know the drugstore and the salon that face Central Park West. It's that you can't have a gym. There's other uses that you can have, like if you wanted to do a doggy daycare, which has certain intensive, smells and sounds and such. You can do that here as a right, but you can't do a yoga studio. So when Jessica and Barbara approached us, I said, we're going to have to rezone the property to C25, and then we would separately apply for the gym. Can you go to the next one? So just so you know the areas we're talking about in the specific area, it's this pink area right here. And so the commercial overlay would go for 100 feet back from Central Park West and would allow those pink areas, both the one on the south and those 2 areas to the north, to be conforming commercial uses so that they would now be permitted pursuant to zoning. Right now they're permitted, but they're grandfathered. And if they were in a C2 overlay, they'd be allowed to be conforming commercial uses. There was some concern expressed about the yellow units. Would those become commercial? Those are doctors' offices. And the presumption is that to make those commercial units, you would need a lot of approvals. You need approvals from the building. You need approvals from landmarks. It's fairly unrealistic to assume that. Moreover, the back 50 feet of this building, there's not just a C2 overlay, it's a C7 commercial district, which could allow even worse and more intensive uses as of right. And in the last 60 plus years, none of those uses have converted to commercial. They're all existing doctor's offices, so presumably they would remain, and presumably these would remain. Can you go forward? So this is a map, and in the 2 minutes and 18 seconds I have left, I'm going to talk to you about what's permitted in the area and what's not. This area that's dotted up here, that's an existing C47 district. This area down here, C66. All of these allow for more intensive commercial uses. This is the area that we're talking about right here. So in this whole area over here, you can already have not only a gym by application, but use groups 7, 8, and 9. And those uses were things that were questioned. Would anything happen to the building? Would there be additional uses in 7, 8, and 9 that would likely come into play if the conversion was allowed? So can you go to the slide showing the use group 14? So just to show you, in that whole area of use group 14, there's no use group 14 areas. That whole area would be allowed to have those uses as of right. There's not one of those uses. Can you go back to 9? These are the use group 9 uses that are allowed, including a banquet hall down here, which is a much larger property. We wouldn't even be able to do a banquet hall given the fact that the building, in addition to all the approvals we need from the board, is also subject to regulations which don't permit eating and drinking uses. So we wouldn't even be allowed to do these uses. Can you go back to 8? These are 8 uses, and while some of these uses are commercial garages, those are by a separate special permit application. Those would not be allowed. So just go back to use group 7. Use group 7 is this one use. Frank, do you know what that is? A bike rental store. We're actually not even allowed to do a bike rental store pursuant to a restrictive declaration that we entered into. So none of those use 7, 8, 9, or 14 are really feasible here. The next slide is really telling because the next slide shows use group 6 areas, and we can already do a use group 6, and this is what makes sense. Use group 6 makes sense because that's a retail use. It's a bank, it's a store, it's what makes money. So we'd be able to do all those uses as of today. The whole point here is to get a yoga studio in this building. That was the only motivation here. And the committee even suggested a rezoning of just this portion of the property. And that was eventually rejected. It was rejected. It was very disappointing. It was rejected by a 2-3 vote, 2-3 against. And so really what we're hoping for is that the community board, recognizing the fact that we can already do commercial there and just really want to have a gym for really the whole area, but more than 425 dwelling units in this building, will consider this and allow the application to proceed and to approve our application. And that's really it. I've taken my 5 minutes, and I'm happy to answer questions at the discretion of the board.
Thank you.
Thank you. This resolution is a little complicated. I understand there's some questions from committee members and board members, and that's because in trying to make sure that we don't create a loophole, we all know what those are for super talls and other buildings, that we don't create a precedent where this will happen in other spaces along Central Park West. So there was a 2-part resolution. The first one was a hands-down disapproval because we don't want to go through a zoning amendment for a portion of a building that would create havoc with the overall planning concept of our community. The second resolution was because we are aware that retail, we don't want to discourage any type of retail or banks or anything else, but the applicant actually had not looked at any other or given us any details about any other retail establishment that could yield the same rent. Apparently yoga studios are in vogue. They don't have a tenant now, is that correct? Hasn't changed?
There was one, but the application took so long that they revoked it.
Well, the application takes long because the community board needs to review it. And most times we get the physical cultural establishment already in the building before. So this is one that we actually caught ahead, but we're flagging it because it's different than every other application. So Richard came up with an idea. We've never really used this before, but it was a second, Part B resolution to see if the temperature of the board or the demeanor would permit a different type of spot zoning just for that one store. In other words, just take the footprint of that retail corner unit, and that failed. So before you tonight are not 2 resolutions. That is to give you the backup of the work that the committee did, because we were trying to salvage a tenant possibility without creating a hardship for the owner. But in this particular case,
we didn't get any financial data. There was no hardship presented. So what we're faced with now is either we accept the fact that they're gonna find, and city planning will start this. By the way, I think Louise, my colleague in researching, and from your memory banks, that there's one other project in Brooklyn that you cited, which had a change of use, and that too was defeated, because we don't want to go against the grain. Well, it was ultimately approved, but the issue is, do we really want to start regulating each individual retailer by what they think the commercial market is gonna pay the highest rent for, when sometimes that use isn't appropriate for the neighborhood? So before you is the simple question: do we approve an amendment that will allow them to move a line and carve out a C25 zoning, commercial zoning, in the frontage of the entirety of the commercial spaces fronting Central Park West, right? Okay, questions?
Yeah.
Over there.
If this rezoning were to go through, would it allow like a restaurant or bar to ever move in? Would that be one of the uses?
Yeah, anything goes.
No, because that's restricted by our covenant with the building.
Oh, wait, that's a problem. We didn't see any covenant with the building. Nobody submitted that.
There's uses which are prevented, and one of them is restaurant and bar, so they cannot be for restaurant.
Okay, one moment. The building itself has a covenant with the commercial space, and they don't allow certain things, and certainly my building does also. But that has nothing to do with what is before us, and covenants, you know, individual private agreements can change.
Second?
So yes, they can put in a restaurant.
Yes.
Sorry, just for my information, what is a covenant? Is it like a legally binding document between?
Yes. It's a restrictive declaration. It's recorded in title to building and prevents those uses.
It could be just in the proprietary lease.
It is not. It's actually, in this case, it's actually recorded. If you go on Acris and look in the history of the building, it's there. It's recorded in 2013. It prevents those uses.
Is it recorded against the deed of that use?
Yes.
But it's not a zoning thing.
Wait a minute.
I need clarity on what exactly we're voting on.
We're voting on an amendment to allow
So if we say
a
yes,
zoning
we're
change, a zoning amendment to allow 100 feet deep by
Oh, sorry, I get
200.
that. I just need.
Yes,
we
is
vote
this-
yes.
Yes.
Yes, it's to disapprove.
Yes.
Yes.
To disapprove. Other questions? Yes, Jay.
Yeah, I'm with Sarah, I'm a little confused because of the language. It says the land use committee advised the applicant that it would disapprove. So what?
We're not voting on that. That was a part B. That's giving you all the information you did because we wanted to respect, you're voting on the first resolution.
And B is gone?
Yes.
B is gone.
B is gone, no longer. Right. Yes.
And the reasoning is that it's too open-ended as to whereas they might put in a yoga facility now, find one that when that's gone 5 years from now, and yoga's not in such fashion anymore. There are a myriad of commercial establishments that could, that was the committee's concern.
Yes.
And that's why, not to, and this has become confused, but the committee worked very well and very hard to obtain what, with due respect to the council representing the often inadequate amount of information and interpretation presented by the council as to precedents of this. It is only after his clients explained after difficult questioning that, for example, that you have a restrictive covenant within the building and things like that. The point here is that the committee valiantly and carefully went through this, and the resolution is the first
resolution to disapprove the motion because of the general reluctance to encourage and develop spot zoning, commercial zoning on Central Park West. And that's why the committee went with the first resolution, and that is what is before this board.
We're out of time. So I think you've heard from the applicant. The owners of this space are here this evening. Oh, please make it fast. Dying here. The zoning first.
You don't need a microphone. I'm just gonna answer this.
You would find it hard to say no to the building next door if you approved it here.
Yes. Right. That's my take on it. Sorry. Okay, can we call the question?
Sure.
All in favor to disapprove?
All those.
Well, again.
Against.
Wait, it's 30. 30? Yep. Okay, against? 5. Abstaining? 2. Okay, so it's 35-2.
Thank you very much. Who's next? Thank you, gentlemen, and thank you for coming.
Just pull it, sir, just pull it out. Yep. Make sure you take the right one.
We're going to BCI.
Why is there an A and a B?
Just an A. Just vote on the A, forget the B. Vote on the A, forget the B.
Because the evening wasn't complicated enough.
Okay,
We're working on a very tight.
so
Rock and roll.
we do number 7. Number 7 is 3 separate SLA applications for 2-year liquor licenses. On these particular 3 applications, we had some community input. In both these locations at 2756 Broadway and 592 Amsterdam, the applicants will want use of the backyard. On those 2 applications, some members of the communities were concerned about the noise that that this may engender. We approved these applications with stipulations. Well, actually, with these SLA applications, we deny them unless they incorporate these stipulations into their method of operation.
Okay, wait, so we just very quickly, we just have to say, there's new language that SLA requires, and it's now not disapproved, it's now approved with caveat, it's now denied with the following caveats. So
Okay.
that's what we're voting for, but saying, we hope we get it.
But the implication is what it always has been?
Yeah.
Yes,
Very good.
correct.
Okay.
Call the
So what
question?
exactly does that mean? Can you clarify that? I don't understand.
On an SLA application, we may have, let's say, approved with conditions. We approve it if you follow these conditions. But with the SLA agency, they don't like that. What you have to do, you have to deny them unless they incorporate certain stipulations into the method of operation.
And it's very point that you had to disapprove with conditions. Now they're saying you have to say denied with conditions. And if we don't say denied, they'll completely disapprove it. So we have to say denied with conditions. The conditions were the conditions we discussed and all voted on at the committee. So, and it mostly had to do with the hours of operation. And so once those are incorporated into the methods of operation, they'll be presented at SLA. Everybody will make their decision.
So as of right now, nothing's set in stone or.
Correct.
Right.
Okay, also,
on 2056 Broadway is a location that we have approved in the past, and this is a location where they had used the backyard before as a commercial application in the business. Finally, to Amsterdam, the owner is also an audio engineer, and he presented a plan as to how to attenuate and mitigate the sounds that may come off the backyard. We do have a speaker on Finally to Amsterdam. That would be Dean Howard.
Yeah. Please be honest. Okay.
Hi,
1
everyone.
minute, I'm sorry. Don't give us your mouth. So you, unfortunately, have 1 minute.
This is the owner?
Yes.
Okay.
We can hear you, just speak out loud.
I can speak up.
Project.
My name's Dean O'Neill. I'm actually building and will operate the new restaurant called the Cardinal. It's a Slovenian-American restaurant. It's the first in New York City. About bringing a lot of the Slovenian culture, which is a mix between Eastern European and Italian. Now, with the restaurant, I'm going beyond what normal construction is required. We're going to be mitigating and cancelling noise, and not just blocking noise, but putting absorbers in as well. So we're attacking it from both ends. The whole idea of what I want to create in this space is a place for people to enjoy food, but also to talk to one another, so they can communicate. I think that's what intelligent and proper societies want. So the backyard is going to be no different. We're building a canopy to make sure that the sound, there's no music outdoors. Again, it's just about enjoying this nice, quiet space so that you can enjoy the food and drink.
I'm going to say he brought the most extensive diagrams and gorgeous.
Linda, can you use the mic?
The mic's dead.
The mic is dead. Oh, sorry.
Meeting went too
A
long.
lot of talking about. So anyway, so the point is we
Anybody got a
saw the diagrams, we saw examples of his sound baffling. It was spectacular. Ironically, last night I was at an outdoor restaurant in a donut that had not even as extensive baffling, but by golly, it was quiet and they could have a conversational tone. So we know that this can happen. We have other
I live there, so I have I've been living there my whole life, so I have a lot of questions.
Okay.
A lot of fire hazards. There's only 2 exits. I live in the back portion. Another question is why we live in that building. We pay enough rent. I'm pretty sure you know the pumps are not that great, and we still don't have access to the back door. Like, the backyard, quote unquote, correct? So my thing is, where do we stand? I work 2 jobs. I get home around 11, 12, and I wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I do not want to deal with drunk people at 12 o'clock in the morning. Because I'm the type to leave my apartment and address the issue. Because even though I call the police for noise complaints, they're not coming. They're not. I live on 89th Street in Amsterdam. The projects are across the street. You know, well, do you actually live on any of the buildings?
No, that's not the issue, sir.
No,
No, it's not the issue, sir. The issue, sir, is that you live there and you're worried about the sound.
No, I'm not worried about the sound. I'm worried about the sound, safety, the crime, the violence, and the drugs that this ultimately brings.
This is not that type of restaurant.
Yeah, it really is. It doesn't matter what type of restaurant it is, man.
Okay, we
It doesn't.
can't really debate this now because we have.
Oh, you guys can debate about bike lanes? Like, I live there, like, I really want to address this. Like,
I don't feel safe because there's only one thing.
We can't know. There's a standard because people just don't know.
It's the family apartments. There's not much. It's really, I think there's, you need to think about it because it's, for me, I think it's a very, it's not safe place. They have restaurants, especially in the backyard. It's, for me, it's.
Okay, thank you very much. We're on a, and sir, you did not sign up.
That's not fair, like.
What about the fire? There is only one exit. How are they gonna get through your canopy?
Well, Does it
Doesn't
have
have
fire
fire
rate?
rate? So because this is a new construction, this place has to comply with all the current ADA and fire safety rules that the city has set down, which are some of the toughest in the world. So this place will have a new COO, which means it has to pass every single test on
There's no
every
override.
single service. And we've already seen and we've already put together, we have engineers who have put everything together to make sure safety and everything is complied with. It will be one of the most advanced ADA service places for a restaurant where people can manage themselves instead of having to be helped by others. So it is a cutting edge, it's a different place. You'll find it'll be very special, it'll be very unique, very welcoming. There is no place, any place in the city, which has these drunken, crazy people. You will not survive. Community boards will kick you out. You will shut down very, very quickly. Not the way to operate.
Thank you. Wait, no,
We don't have any plans, it says backyard use.
Exactly, like,
hold on.
no, it's not fair, I'm not gonna hold on, I live there, like, where do you live? Do you live?
I lived there for 42 years.
Wait, I'm sorry. In a different avenue.
I'm sorry, this is not a debate.
Yeah?
Wait, this is not a discussion we're having right now, because you did not sign up, you had the.
Did not sign up, where was the sign up sheet?
Wait.
All I saw in my apartment building was a sign to come here at 6:30.
This is not a debate.
I'm gonna turn it to a debate. I'm not gonna shut
The
you up.
right signs, they put a fake sign on the door. They said if they put the sign for the 12th, they didn't have the sign for the 2nd, it was some, huh?
You were at the 12.
No, I was at, right.
People,
They had-
this is not a debating
I
spot.
don't care if you gotta go
So
home.
here's the
I'm
deal.
gonna stay here until we solve this issue, man. Cause it directly affects me.
This is
So,
what it's all
and not
about.
only
Board
me,
members
other
and
people.
everything.
And
Yeah.
I'm the
All
host.
board members, okay, Robert?
This is for the committee. When you examine the drawing, right?
Yeah.
Are you satisfied with the second egress?
Yes.
So there is.
There is a second
To answer this young man's important question, there is a second exit.
Where is the second?
Excuse me, sir.
I'm asking the committee, the committee said that they were
The camera live streaming, we're just getting your back. So-
Fire code, you can't get past.
Fire code, there is.
2 hours.
Sarah has a question?
I'm sorry if I missed this at the beginning. What's currently in the space and has there ever been a restaurant?
There was a Papa John's and a Subway.
Which the police was always there
Board
because there
members
was a
are
lot of
talking,
crime.
public members are
But I'm gonna say what I want to say. I'm sorry.
So, wait,
Get it
so-
properly.
Can I just,
So Sarah, to answer your question, there was always food service there
Right.
on the corner, and there was a 99-cent store.
I totally hear your concern. I do feel like this sounds like it's gonna be a much nicer establishment than the Papa John's and the Subway.
Yeah,
You don't understand, like, who, like, literally each avenue changes. Like,
No,
we know that.
look,
We know.
I live at 86 in Amsterdam. so,
Exactly, and you know every
I
block
know,
changes.
But that
We know
area
that.
right there,
Okay,
right
let's-
now.
You know that
Where it's
demographic.
been, where it's been the Papa
Let's-
John's,
let's-
it hasn't been right.
No, I have my hand up. I want to say,
Richard, you have a question?
Sarah was in,
Can I
Sarah
just-
was in the midst
No,
of
no,
her
just
comment.
take the middle of the table.
When there's restaurants like that, like, I mean, my kids love Subways, I'm not trying to
It's not even
smack
a
on
restaurant.
Subway, but they're not very nice. They're not very nice, but this sounds like it's gonna be nice, so it could improve the block.
Board
You're not
members,
hitting me out.
board
I'm not against
members,
the
I
restaurant.
need
I'm
the
just against
attention of all the
backyard
board
use.
members.
That's all I'm against.
We have a clock
Like, it's
that
not
says
fair.
9:28. Okay, guys, we have a very long agenda.
something
We have to close the agenda along, because we have to be out of here.
You will hear.
Richard, you have.
yeah, could I just say that I think we make the process for citizens to come out to our meetings very difficult. These people have been here for 3 hours waiting to speak, and they're also not being as respectful as they could be to the board. And I'm sure you're very frustrated. I think we're in a place where we can talk through and very quickly come up with some ways of finding resolutions. He seems like a very responsible, respectful restaurateur. You're concerned neighbors. Why don't we figure out what can make sense?
Richard, we had a 3-hour meeting about this
Why,
on Wednesday the 12th. So this was met, and these were
Wednesday the
questions of Brad.
But he didn't know about it.
And wait, I'm gonna finish this. And then the point that this gentleman made was that he gave everybody his phone number, and he gave them information so they could discuss it.
All the
I beg
questions.
to defer. That's not true, sir.
You don't need to, but.
The management of our buildings, all three buildings, is terrible. And it's my problem?
Well, no, it's our problem, but not in this application.
It is the issue. It is the issue.
We got clarity.
Sir, we're gonna give you 1 minute. We're gonna give you exactly 1 minute. Say.
1 minute for what? I don't even know what exactly.
Every public speaker at the meeting has had 1 minute.
I do not know the information you guys know, like you know.
Every public speaker gets 1 minute. That's in the.
So we're gonna start timing you when the cowbell rings, you're done.
All right.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm definitely.
Simon, sir, only because it's so far, and it's for 300 some people, right?
Well, so you're using his time, he has 1 minute, let him
She can
start.
speak. Please.
No, it's not up to you.
She can speak.
So then
It's
your 1 minute.
it's your
Say your
turn to
name,
speak.
speak.
Okay, my name is Gabriela, and I live in the apartment at 588 Amsterdam. And my very issue is, there's a bar, right?
It's
a
a
bar.
That's a different restaurant. We're not at that restaurant.
Why say that somebody put it in the paper?
That's a different applicant.
Misleading, thing that someone put around on the blog post. Someone did that, I don't know who.
So do not have that information.
So that's why I'm here, because I'm really concerned that we have a bar. And it's a family building, that's why I'm really concerned.
So hopefully you can see it, it's a restaurant, it's gonna be a restaurant.
Gonna be a lovely restaurant. Now, he gets 1
I
minute.
understand that.
You
So
get 1
I'm not
minute.
opposed to the restaurant, I'm just opposed to the back space.
Backyard.
I just need that, I need that.
We don't have
That's it. Fire
May I
hazards.
suggest, sir, may I suggest that we vote, because we have to vote, and
But what
then,
exactly you guys want?
excuse me, sir, excuse me, and that you and the residents who have not
Talk
heard
outside.
everything, go outside,
That's.
and with goodwill, because you are going to live together, we must vote, sir, and you go out and you start working things out with information. Now,
The
we
correct
vote,
information.
we call the question.
The question's been called, all the.
Those in favor?
Come on, she's been waiting for 3 hours. We're not gonna let her talk.
She did talk. Did you sign up to speak? This is the
What we're trying to address with that.
Say the level
We are now voting
Number 7.
on number 7.
which is,
It's three SLA applications are denied with stipulations.
all those in favor, raise your hand.
I'm sorry, you're in my life. I believe 31.
All those opposed,
One.
all those abstaining,
Wait, Michelle, that wasn't opposed, right? Good.
all those abstaining.
Make it 30, and I've got to abstain.
Okay, so
1, 2,
30.
Mark, were you abstaining?
Abstaining but not for cause.
Okay. 30-03.
No, 30-0-0, I'm sorry, 30-0-1-1, right?
Linda, are you for cause?
I'm abstaining for cause.
Right.
So, but Susan's
But you
also
have to
abstaining.
Who's
state your
abstaining?
cause.
Wait, who is abstaining for abstaining?
Abstaining, not for cause.
We don't abstain for cause, we don't vote for
Okay.
cause. Who
One,
is abstaining?
2, wait, Mario, well.
We are abstaining. Who cannot vote for cause? You must say why you cannot.
I cannot vote for cause because I have represented the owners, not now, but I have in the past, and that's why.
Okay, that's one. Let's move on to the next.
30-0-3-1.
And if I want to make one statement, this
No.
gentleman stayed all night and didn't give his number to
We don't
everybody.
have time.
Okay, let's go.
Okay, next item on the agenda is 474 Columbus Avenue. This is a new SLA application for a 2-year liquor license. There was no opposition to this establishment, and we voted to approve. All those in favor?
We trust this won't get violent.
you're voting yes or no?
Oh, I'm sorry. Don't count me.
21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32. 32, against.
Anyone against?
Anyone against? Anyone abstaining?
For cause,
I think so, yes.
ineligible for cause.
Okay,
I represent the owner.
okay. 32001.
Okay, now, number 9 on the agenda. It's a renewal, on the closed sidewalk cafe renewal. There was no opposition from the community on this one. We voted to approve. All those in favor?
In favor. Now we're forever hold your peace. Starting. 1, 2,
9.
19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 30, 31, 32, 33, 34, 35, 36. Anybody against? Against? Abstaining? Abstain? I'm sorry, not voting for cause? What were you, Rich? You were just touching.
I was
the
yes.
Okay, we're okay. 36000.
Number 10 on the agenda. This is 2 new unenclosed sidewalk cafes applications. 370 Columbus Avenue, we didn't have any opposition to that one. And we voted to approve. 517 Amsterdam Avenue, the Ishiki. Originally, there was some opposition because of the sign they had outside. Since then, they removed it, and they don't plan to use it again. There were some concern with it being only a bar and not a restaurant, having a sidewalk cafe. But we voted to approve.
And also, it's a more narrower sidewalk cafe on a block with many sidewalk cafes. And this is a seasoned operator.
Is that Jacob's Pickle?
Yes.
Yeah, they're great guys.
Can we force them to rename?
Call question?
All those in favor? Against?
If that's all the people.
Okay. Number 10 on the agenda, number 11. This is a new enclosed cafe application for car miles. We have members of the public to speak on this one. I know there has been some opposition. There has been opposition in the past to do enclosed sidewalk cafes. We, as a committee, we have decided that we're going to take those applications as they come, one at a time. They're going to have to live or die on their merits. We're going to let the owner is here to speak, and I will let speak in a moment. There has been some intimation in the past that there have been a rule of CB7 that we wouldn't allow a policy that we wouldn't allow them to close sidewalk cafes. And at the last student committee meeting, this was discussed, and it was came to light that that's not really true. Okay.
Okay, folks, we have 5 minutes
never
for
a
this
policy.
There
discussion.
was never a policy, yes.
Okay.
So we have a different time.
Thanks.
Jeff, you got 1 minute.
I will talk quick. Sorry.
Andrew, got the time.
So first, I just want to thank everyone. It's been a long night. I did sit in this board many years ago, way before there were bike lane issues, so I have a lot of respect for a lot of you. I didn't have to go through this during my 4 years. Much easier. I live in the neighborhood. I work in the neighborhood. Carmine is an institution. Restaurant's been there 30 years. We're a reasonably priced restaurant. We still have a tablecloth, a bread basket. We take good care of our staff. Some of our staff came out here tonight. We live in a mixed-use building, commercial, residential, synagogue next door. We're very good neighbors to everybody, which is why I think no one came out in opposition at the subcommittee for this. There were many people at the subcommittee meeting business to complain about lots of different issues that went on. No one came out to talk about anything at Carmine's. I'm here tonight for a couple reasons. 150 people work at Carmine's. They have good paying jobs. Closing our cafe will help that. We all know that we live in a very progressive neighborhood, first of 15 in the state with the minimum wage. I'm priding myself that I never paid minimum wage to our staff. I pride myself that we did paid sick leave. I pride myself that we increased the social safety net. However, the minimum wage hike raised things 40%. And that's a fact we have to deal with in the restaurant. So these 22 seats will contribute, if we're allowed to enclose them, so I don't have to worry about the weather, $435,000 directly to my employees and payroll. That's why I'm here doing this, protect 150 jobs. At the rate that we're at, trying to stay a reasonably priced restaurant, we wouldn't be able to sustain, we would have to close. We're not a bank, we're not a nightclub, we're not a Dwayne Reed. I don't think we want another empty space on the Upper West Side. It's not a threat, it's just a fact. Thanks.
Hold on, we have one more speaker, Chris Rivera.
Good evening. Can you say your name again, please?
Christian Rivera.
Thank you.
Good evening. I worked in Carmine's for 21 years. It's like my second home. I feel like this opportunity is very big for all my workers. I'm here representing them, for our families to support. Thank you for your time.
Okay.
Clara?
Yeah, I've dined at Carmine's from time to time. I did so last week. I'm a fan of Carmine's. However, this is a horrible idea, would be a horrible precedent, and I'm going to just say a couple things, but I urge my colleagues to vote against, to disapprove, that is to vote against this resolution that would approve. Sometime back, and maybe 15 years or so, we had before us an application to have an enclosed cafe at Artie's on Broadway in the 80s. And at that time, we voted to disapprove. We correctly, in my view, and the majority of the time, thought it was a really bad idea to have an enclosed cafe on Broadway, which is our most crowded, most diverse commercial street. The city allowed it anyway, and it was renewed a number of times. And now, last I knew at least, it's sitting, a problem we've had with other cafes as well, it's sitting empty. Carmine's, it's not as wide as the Artie's Cafe, but Carmine's is a huge restaurant. The issue, Jeff, I think I remember you. The issue that Jeff talks about the minimum wage, whether you're for it or against it, is the same issue of any other restaurant, any other business in the city. There's nothing unique to Carmine's about that issue. And Carmine's, in fact, has a huge restaurant space. It then has an auxiliary indoor space substantial behind the bar. And to turn a space on our most crowded commercial street, we haven't done so in 15 years or 20 years with good reason, into an enclosed cafe, don't do it.
Barbara? Carmine's has been on Broadway for 30 years. And Jeff, as the owner of that restaurant, is extremely well respected. When he comes to us and he says, and he pleads with us, he says, look, this is the difference between my being able to stay open and being able to close, I'm having to close the restaurant. Our business committee voted unanimously in favor of putting this enclosure. Now, he's asking for 22 seats. His outdoor cafe is tiny. The enclosure will just close those 22 seats. We asked him all the obvious questions. Well, why don't you raise your prices? He said, look, I'm a pasta restaurant. I can't raise my prices. Carmine's is one of the few affordable places left on the Upper West Side. We have a crisis with our small businesses. They are closing left and right. I'm sure you all know that. And we can make it difficult for him. He could go down to DCA and he may get his approval anyway. But we could show our support for a small business owner who has been in our neighborhood for 30 years with a very, very successful restaurant by saying yes, as the committee did.
Okay, well now let's go across the hall. I'm gonna go Robert quickly.
Well, Carmine's is an institution, it's very important for us. And it's very important to respect something very dear to my life. So when you walk down Broadway, as I do all the time, you see bus loads of people coming in from different parts of the city, suburbs. And Jeff is proposing, what he's pointing out is absolutely true. It's the bottom line. The bottom line is she drives up that if that outdoor seating is not occupied year round, you're losing at least that $400,000. So that it's important that we do everything to optimize the viability.
Thank you.
of
Thank you.
local
We have
institutions.
2
Wait a
minutes, folks, so
second,
not everybody's gonna be able to speak. Please understand that.
Just okay, 30 seconds.
No, there's no more 30 seconds. We've got 2 minutes to speak.
Let me cap it off.
They're recapped. Hey,
I hear for Clary Seven,
And then
since I've
Andrew.
joined the community board, I've never voted for an enclosed sidewalk cafe. I realize that we're in a difficult era right now with difficult times. Is there a way, and Clary, you're gonna want to shoot me at dawn, but for this particular restaurant, that instead of having them go on once they're built, they stay up and they rot, they look terrible, or they get abandoned like the diner on Artie's Diner. But in this particular case, if the owner would agree to allow the, if you decide to retire and you're gonna go to Nova Scotian track bear or whatever you wanna do, when that, your lease or your agreement is up, it's your responsibility to take that enclosure down. It has to go. Because the streets are getting more complicated. We just heard about bicycles. There's like newsstands, kiosks, and we want to get rid of all the stupid fancy.
Make it an amendment. Okay.
Make it an amendment.
Stop it, Shelley. I'm not finished. We're going to do this. We'll decide to make an amendment. We can do that afterwards.
I just want to make this as a general comment. Sometimes I feel like a broken record, but I think it's important. All day, every newspaper you read, every blog, all we hear is about the vacant storefronts, how we need to preserve and help our neighborhood businesses. And here you have someone who has been in the community for years and years, is respected, had no opposition at our meeting, came to us even before he applied to discuss this. And if we're not going to help support the businesses and the people who have these jobs in our community that are beloved, that support our community, who are we going to support? And I think that's critically important to do in our vote. And we need to support our businesses and support those people that are here now and not just say, we love them.
Discussion is over. We will thank you. Resolution.
I'd like to propose a resolution to stall this until when we can have a discussion, because it's not reasonable to make such a momentous decision without letting us talk. So does anyone second my resolution?
Motion to table.
So the motion.
Motion to table that's seconded.
The motion now has an amendment to ask that it be a temporary.
They can't do that. That's not enforceable.
There is a motion to table or to send back to committee.
I'm sorry, we have had this, every committee does.
Then
We have,
vote it down.
we have had this committee meeting.
People, we're past our time, so there's a motion on the table to table it. The chair
Call that
don't want to
question.
table it, so all those in favor of not voting on it tonight?
All those in favor of tabling it?
Table.
Not voting
Of the
for not-
motion.
There's not been
One,
enough.
two, three, 4, 5, 6. All those who want to vote on the amendment tonight. All right, we are voting on the amendment. All those who are voting, all those who are in favor of the resolution, raise your hand. All those opposed? All those abstaining?
Wait. I didn't count this. Opposed. Seven. Abstaining?
Abstaining.
6. Anyone not voting? Pause. 23-7-6.
Carries.
Mark.
Okay, so I have slides for you, but I don't think I have time for them. So if you'll just indulge me with the recitation, which I'm going to try to, but of course I just lost my notes. Okay, so thank you. Okay, so while I'm organizing myself, please note that the Preservation Committee, instead of having a July and an August meeting, is going to meet once on August 1st, Thursday, August 1st. 57 West 69th Street. Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go through all of these, except for 915 West End Avenue. Jay's going to do that one because I voted in the opposition. I'm going to describe them to you. If it's acceptable to you, we'll bundle them and vote all on one. If there is one you want to call out, we'll call that out. We're not going to waste time. 57 West 69th Street. it's unusual for us, for somebody to replace one of those scoops in a townhouse. It's even more unusual for them to take out the old and put something even more appropriate in. That's what's going on here. This is one of those that comes down, turns right, and then comes down, and then comes around again. And what they're doing is taking out one that looks really bizarre and putting in one that looks like the neighbors on either side. It'll be more, and it'll have period detail and so forth. That's 57 West 69. Any questions on that one? I don't see any. I think we're going to bundle, so hold on, okay? I'm going to hold 120. No, I'm going to do it right now. 128 West 70th Street. 128 West 70th Street is.
Can you not talk?
Hi, can you indulge me, please, because we're really under a deadline here. 128 West 70th Street is a townhouse. It has a rooftop addition. It is proposed that they want to expand the existing rooftop addition and then build another rooftop addition on top of that. One of the things that they will do is move the rooftop addition all the way to be flush with the rear lot line. They will also build a second rooftop addition set back from that. The front of it, even though it's not readable from the street, will be a blank wall with only one window in it, and it's to be made out of dark gray metal on the front and back. And then also they will have, you know how the top row of a townhouse has 3 punched windows always? Well, they want to take 2 of them and put a picture window in the middle of them. So we opposed this one for all of those reasons. There were other issues, but those are the most important. Let's see, 76 West 85th Street. There is an existing bracket on a first floor apartment window with those metal grills. There is a lovely dog grooming and training facility in the areaway basement below. If you're walking along Columbus Avenue, you'll never see it, even though they have a sandwich board out front. So they want to put a sign on the existing bracket that tells you that your dog should go down in the areaway down there. We approved that unanimously as well. 333 Central Park West is a top floor. It's one of those apartment buildings that has bays that go in and out. This is a bay on 93rd Street, not on Central Park West. It's a double window with some beautiful ornamentation on top of it. And what they propose to do is to create, in lieu of one of those 2 pairs of windows, louvers that would eliminate 7 individual air conditioning units, plus a couple of dryer vents and God knows what else. You can see it from the street, but only on 93rd Street and only if you really know where to look. There are other full-length louvers in this building. I think some of them were pre-designation. Our resolution was unanimous to approve. 319 West 104th Street is a redesign of an areaway. Essentially, there is a long bit of a knee wall, an opening with some stairs down into the areaway, and then a little bit of a knee wall. The building has this gorgeous bay window thing that goes all the way to the ground. And they want to install a handicap access ramp. It won't be ADA compliant, but it's better than nothing. In order to do it, if they put it straight in, it would go right into the bay window. So they got to kind of do it a little bit angled. So what they're going to do is take the knee wall, the small portion of the knee wall away, and that's why it's in front of you. Because if they didn't have to do that, then they could approve this at staff level. They take the little bit of a knee wall away. They make stairs so that you can put in the sideways ramp, and then they want to put a fence and a gate. The fence and the gate are designed to look exactly like the one next door. Okay, so we approved that unanimously. I'm going to hold 915 West End Avenue. And I'm going to tell you about 120 West 72nd Street, which is Orange Theory. And you heard this a month or 2 ago because they came before you for a physical cultural establishment. Now they want a sign. I'd love to show you the sign because the O in orange has a big flat effect.
We're running out of time.
Okay, so the only reason this is before you is because of the splat. Otherwise, the size of the sign, everything else is could be approved at staff level, but they want to keep their logo. They also came before us with a suggestion for an illuminated blade sign, the kinds that stick out instead of go along. And when they spoke to us and we kind of thought that was a bad idea, they withdrew that. So you'll see the resolution records that, so you can't go back and say that we didn't consider it. Those are all of them except for 915 West End Avenue, which is a new canopy that was a new canopy on an apartment building on West End Avenue and 103rd Street. Jay is going to present that because I voted against it.
104.
Thank you, 104.
Those are all bundled together.
So,
Not yet, but I'm hoping.
so it's very simple. It's a building, they want to restore a canvas canopy outside the entrance. There was one originally, it's historically correct, it was removed back in 1940. Now they want to put it back. Mark voted against it because he didn't like the fact that it was shaped like this instead of like this. Notwithstanding, I put that in the category of personal preference rather than appropriateness. The rest of the committee members felt it was appropriate. It's a gray canvas awning with the number of the building on it. We felt it was appropriate, and I would call it.
So hang on. There was actually two dissenting. Please, there were two dissenting votes. If anybody, but I'm happy to go forward. So do I have an objection to bundling all that you just heard?
There was one abstention.
Right.
Just one no.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough.
Mark, could you bundle the 5 that you described and have a separate vote on this one?
That's what we'll do. Okay. Anybody object to that?
Let's just vote.
Okay. So we're going to bundle numbers 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and 18. All those in favor of the resolutions as presented on those, please raise your hand now. Hold on.
I wanted to say.
Jay, you can dissent. That favor, where are you on this?
You can dissent wherever you want. I'm fine.
So let's do this. Jay, stop. Jay, tell the minute taker afterwards, okay? You can dissent on the one. Oh, thank you.
I just want to no vote on the.
I have.
Okay, I got it. Okay, so now go ahead and call the no's.
So we had.
On the bundle.
32 on the bundle.
Anybody opposed to the bundle?
Opposed.
Again,
115,
just
I got
the
you.
number, no, number 13.
On 13, you're.
Fair enough.
Abstain. Not eligible.
Okay, so now we're gonna pick up number 17, and Jay should call the questions for that.
All the questions.
Great job. All those in favor?
Take the same number and subtract 2.
Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Subtract 4.
7. Mark.
I am not, yeah, I'm a no on this one.
3rd. Wait, hold on. That was 17?
Yes, that was number 17.
Opposed?
Mark.
One.
Oh, thank you, thank you.
3, 4.
You
You were 4. Yeah. Abstaining. Not eligible.
I'll show the slides later if anybody wants them. Thanks very much.
This is, the next resolution is from Parks and Environment. It's the waterfront edge design guidelines. Very quickly, what it is, if you know about LEED certification for buildings, which means they're environmentally sound. This is the same thing for waterfront development. And it's a certification process. There's a 300-page manual. In our district, it's really not that relevant because our waterfront is basically Riverside Park, and we don't expect too much development there. But in case there is, they are asking us to recommend that whenever there is development, that they should follow these guidelines and seek certification. It's in 3 categories: accessibility, resilience, and ecological damage or thrift. So 3 community boards so far in Manhattan have been approached and approved this, 1, 9, and 14 overall boards in New York City have approved it.
Let's be number 15.
Let's be number.
Okay, all those in favor?
Hey, I thought we were gonna say encourages instead of requirements.
And,
Yeah.
this comes to all 59 community
I believe
Yes,
they're going to.
yes. All those in
Well,
favor?
the ones that don't have
All
water.
those in favor?
1, 2,
Ken, I think you have an error in transmission, but
Oh, yeah.
we'll talk about it later.
Okay.
Three. Opposed? Abstaining? Not eligible?
Housing committee.
33,002.
We're just doing it super quick, very quick.
The rule would basically evict people who are mixed status families from section 8 and public housing. Mixed status means ineligible immigrants and people who are eligible. The others would say a child who's eligible for housing, living with their mother who might be adopted. The whole family would be evicted from public housing in that case. Right now, HUD already prorates the rents for people who are ineligible, so HUD is not subsidizing currently any ineligible immigrant rents. So we put together the few resolution your approval need, but we would like to submit it as comments to HUD before the winter picks on the 9th. Any questions?
Great work.
Great work.
Great work. Thank
All in
you.
favor?
Yay!
1, 2.
No housing.
This is a combined housing,
Go
combined
Go.
housing, health and human services,
Yes, thank you.
joint committee.
Yes.
33.
All those opposed? Abstaining?
No.
Okay, before Health and Human Services has their last resolution, just a couple little tidbits. This is in your packet, this correct, the sheet is the second time it's incorrect. It goes into your handbook. Everybody should have a handbook except possibly Heidi and I have this as well. So, this goes, and Robert, I think I have yours. So this, save this sheet, it goes in your handbook. And, clear everything off your table, no junk, anything left here, water bottles, everything goes out in the body. We're gonna leave here in a second, this resolution is over, and we have an amendment to it.
Okay, number one, in March, we passed a safe staffing resolution almost unanimously here. It helped, according to New York City, New York State Nurse Association, it helped stop the strike, and the contract went through. But that's not only the beginning. There are no standards in New York State or New York City. So that although the state funds many hospitals, and the city funds many hospitals, we can't be guaranteed that the ratios that are recognized academically and professionally as the safe ones, the ones that produce better health outcomes, the ones that help prevent death, the ones that enable nurses and other who give direct care to function properly and not get sick out and burnt out, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and reduces readmissions for the same thing. All these things can be taken care of. This resolution asks the city council to pass a resolution to push the state to pass its regulations. It also goes further and says the city should do the same for the Health and Hospitals Corporation and all the city-funded health, acute care and nursing homes funded by New York City.
Call the questions?
Fantastic work again.
All right. Linda. Aye. Sorry.
Opposed? Abstaining?
Sorry. That's your favor I had, right? Okay, good. Opposed? Abstaining? Not eligible?
33,000.
Hang on, no, wait a minute.
Sorry.
Robert, you want to call a quick vote on it? So I move that there be a sense of the board to support the charter revision report that you heard earlier. Do I hear a sense of the board? Say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Motion to adjourn.
Without objection. Yes. Well, in and out. Here and